The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Thursday, June 15th, 2023. My name is Emma Vigeland in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Kerry Howley, writer at New York Magazine and author of Bottoms Up and The Devil Laughs, A Journey Through the Deep State. And later in the program, Edwin F. Ackerman, professor at Syracuse University, on AMLO's legacy for the left in Mexico. Meanwhile, good news from the Supreme Court. They voted 7-2 to uphold a federal law that gives preference to Native families in the adoption of Native American children. Largely a win for tribal sovereignty. Thankfully, no Fed rate hike this time, as inflation keeps dropping. They won't rule it out, though. And Wall Street bettors are still banking on a recession coming soon, probably due to the 10 previous rate hikes. Trump reportedly refused to try to settle in the documents case a few months ago, as his lawyer suggested.
Look at new lawyer.
Losers do that. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez enters the Republican presidential race. Everyone says, who? He didn't vote for Trump in 2016 and 2020. I think that's going to maybe cause some problems, but this is a way to get book sales up. Adam Schiff will not be censured for the or the Russian investigation, I should say, with more than 20 Republicans defecting, along with every Democrat. I wish Ilhan Omar experienced that same solidarity from her caucus. Leading voting rights attorney Dale Ho has been narrowly confirmed by the Senate to a lifetime judgeship in the highly important Southern District of New York, a major victory for progressives on judgeships. So that smoking gun of Biden accepting a bribe on audio, well, Republicans are even now publicly starting to admit it may not exist. Greg Abbott sends more migrants to LA, as Gavin Newsom considers bringing a legal fight to DeSantis for doing just that. Grand jury indicts Daniel Penny on a second-degree manslaughter charge. And lastly, happy birthday to Donald Trump. Just kidding. Marxist revolutionary Che Guevara. It is Trump's birthday today, though, right?
It was yesterday.
Oh, it was yesterday. Okay. Well, happy birthday to Che Guevara. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. Hello. It's an EmMajority Report Thursday. Hello
I'm sorry.
to Matt.
Excuse me. It is. Che's was also yesterday. Sorry.
Oh.
Both of them were
yesterday.
So Trump is also a revolutionary with
Have they ever been in the same room together?
Are we certain they
No,
didn't?
I'm joking. I mean, when did Che Guevara die? What, 1966, 67?
Yeah.
67?
So when Trump was a 21-year-old man.
I mean, perhaps the spirit lives within him in some way. Absolutely not. That's
Great guy, the late great Che Guevara. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. Che.
That tribal law that was upheld by the Supreme Court is a really big deal, because it's really about tribal sovereignty, but what it also does is acknowledge in some way the immense harm that we inflicted upon Native families and their family structure.
Is a part of genocide. Like
yes.
It's in the genocide commissions and definitions. You will see things like
removing children from their families and rehousing them with, for instance, white parents. Has happened in the Lakota and Dakota in Minnesota.
Didn't it happen in Chile under Pinochet too? Like,
I think it's basically like a common thing, especially in like settler colonial contexts. But like there's a famous historian who writes about the Dakota stuff, and there's a troubling passage where he's like, "Oh yeah, I used to help my grandma go pick up Native babies and help them find new homes in Christian communities." And it's like that is something you should maybe look a little bit more critically at in your own personal history, sir.
Right, exactly. And in like the Times write-up of this decision, it was about the law that was at issue was meant to at least rectify that in some marginal way, because around a third of Native children were removed from their parents, to Matt's point, and put into foster care, put up for adoption, and then they were placed in non-native homes. It was a part of our genocide against the indigenous population in this country. So, I mean, even this extremist right-wing Supreme Court can at least acknowledge that, thankfully, and it was a 7-2 decision. And of course, Alito and Thomas are the dissenters, the freaks that they are.
It's weird how Gorsuch is. I mean, we should find something on Gorsuch's native policy, because he's actually much better than you would expect from a Republican, or even any Supreme Court justice.
It turns out, though, that sometimes on some of these more niche issues, when they're removed from like the incentives set by the Federalist Society, they can have their own opinions because there's no leverage. They're lifetime. It's a lifetime appointment. But speaking of Republicans, Senator Lindsey Graham went on Sean Hannity's show last night to, speak about Trump critically, right? I mean, this is a bad thing for the Republican Party to have the frontrunner for the nomination and the former president indicted for the first time in our history on federal counts, dozens of federal counts, because he hoarded documents and refused to return them when asked politely many times by federal authorities. Obviously, I'm kidding. Lindsey Graham did not speak critically of Donald Trump. That's something he used to do. We'll get to that in a second. He went on Sean Hannity's show to sloppily suck up to the guy and wish him a happy birthday instead.
Oh, I agree. And happy birthday, President Trump, because he's watching this show. So I talked to him. Hey, pal.
Okay.
You had dinner with Melania and Ivanka. We got your back. President Trump, we have your back. This is not about you. It's
this
about
is embarrassing.
us.
Why is there a live audience?
You could take the Dalai Lama and make him the Republican nominee that tried to destroy his life. They hate conservatism. This is a bunch of BS. President Trump, you're going to prevail. You're going to be the Republican nominee, and you're going to be president again. Just hang in there.
The studio audience.
This is a thing that Hannity's been doing. Oh, look at that. He's like, as happy as a clam.
It's like Joe McHale doing like Talk Soup vibes.
Yeah, this is the soup with
I feel like I'm watching The View.
Hannity now does it where he has the so he has the live studio audience back, and he also says he also brings out his Hannity stitched footballs. And he'll throw them into the crowd.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so some crowd work from Sean. Exactly. I mean, he does give off like maybe he was a quarterback in high school and no,
there's a famous story about this. Sam can fill us in on, but he was like into golf or some sort of womanly sport, and Roger Ailes said, "Hey, that's soccer. I think it was like you gotta get that out of here."
Oh, that's too Euro.
Football.
So he's overcompensating by throwing footballs into crowds. Great. That says a lot about Fox's perceptions of masculinity. But the reason I play that is because Lindsey Graham is not the only. I mean, he's known to be the guy that is the most like obsequious, sucking up to whoever the strong man is in the Republican Party at the time, or whoever he's decided he's going to serve. He is a servant in that way. He did that with John McCain, even though they were friends. That was his role in their relationship his entire career. But J.D. Vance, another esteemed Republican senator, this guy was supposed to be a different brand of Republican, but he's really just a crypto-fascist venture capital guy. But he went on Laura Ingram's show, making the senators making the rounds on Fox News last night, and spoke about Trump being federally charged. And he's upset about it as well, not just because he's endorsed Trump for president, but because of this?
It's hugely significant. And this is the argument I make. Look, I've endorsed Donald Trump, but I would make this argument to people who are not going to support Donald Trump. This is really not about who was president. It's about the office of the presidency itself. Do you use that office to harass your political opponents, or do you use that office to enforce the law? What we're seeing here is such selective enforcement that you're absolutely right. It's going to destroy the people's faith in equal administration of the law. If you have Democrats facing one set of principles and Republicans facing the harshest application of the law, then you're going to eliminate people's faith that the law is about what you do and whether you do it the right way and not about politics.
Military? Who's going to sign up for that military?
That's exactly right.
What?
Why are you going to sign up for a military that is applying justice unequally? Why are you going to send your kids to law
deprivation,
school? Why are you going to pay your taxes?
Promise.
The entire foundation of this country is that whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, we all face the same justice system. Joe Biden's Department of Justice is going to war against that principle. They're going to break the country unless we stop it.
JD.
They're going to break the country. No one signs up for the military because they.
I think the Department of Justice is fair.
Right, because people aren't signing up for the military because they have faith in Merrick Garland or something like that.
Recruits go straight into the recruiting center and they're like, hey, this Department of Justice is really cooking lately. Where can I go kill people for this country?
Yeah, right. I mean, to be honest, I would say that the American military is somewhat of a consistent through line with our justice system and how we operate as an empire in the world. But, okay, so these guys support Donald Trump. They're sticking up for him. But just so everybody understands how craven this is, I will always play this clip of Lindsey Graham in 2016 and then read this quote from J.D. Vance every time they go so hard in support of their buddy Trump. This is who they truly are. They have no principles whatsoever. This was Lindsey Graham in 2016. Play it every time.
Your reaction to hearing what Donald Trump says?
I'm disgusted. Well, I want to talk to the Trump supporters for a minute. I don't know who you are, and I don't know why you like this guy. I think what you like about him, he appears to be strong when the rest of us are weak. He's a very successful businessman, and he's going to make everything great. He's going to take all the problems of the world and put them in a box and make your life better. That's what he's selling. Here's what you're buying. He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. He doesn't represent my party. He doesn't represent the values that the men and women who wear the uniform are fighting for. I've been in the Air Force for 33 years. I retired this June. He's the ISIL Man of the Year, by the way. Just got back from Iraq a week ago this Monday.
I know. We interviewed you live from there. You were with Senator John McCain, and you were.
All right, we got it. But he got xenophobic bigot. And J.D. Vance. This was a screenshot of a private conversation that he had with his roommate in college at Yale, who is now a state senator himself, chose to put this out publicly. Thank you for the public service, Josh McLaurin. J.D. Vance said this about Donald Trump. But I'm not surprised by Trump's rise, and I think the entire party has only itself to blame. We are, whether we like it or not, the party of lower income, lower education, white people, and I have been saying for a long time that we need to offer those people something, and maybe maybe even expand our appeal to working class black people in the process, or a demagogue would. We are now at that point. Trump is the fruit of the party's collective neglect. I go back and forth between thinking Trump is a cynical asshole like Nixon, who wouldn't be that bad and might even prove useful, or that he's America's Hitler. How's that for discouraging? I would say the most discouraging part is that now, J.D. Vance, you have endorsed that person who you described in that text as potentially America's Hitler. And that Lindsey Graham so easily can now be his biggest cheerleader, because this is an authoritarian party. But it's a hallmark of fascism in this way too. The strong man at the top, and they will sink to they can't sink any lower, honestly, in their backing of this guy.
There's only certain types of energy that they can use to generate people to the polls, and it's not tax cuts.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing. I would encourage Matt Stoller, who recently took the erstwhile elite left-wing critics to task for not updating their priors because J.D. Vance was supposedly helping, what do you say, implement rail safety rules. And I'll just say there's a story in the Lever yesterday. J.D. Vance quietly helped chemical industry lobbyists weaken his rail safety bills. So I would encourage Matt Stoller to update his priors about erstwing left-wing critic priors, because left-wing seems to be right there.
Exactly. Julia Rock on that story. Great story in the Lever. But yeah, there's a good distillation. If you want to send this to your family and friends, this is the GOP. The contrast between those two statements. There's nothing that they won't say cynically to get your vote. There's no principles at play here, except, obviously the rich get richer. All right, guys, before we get to Kerry, we have a word from one of our sponsors, Liquid IV, which I use almost every day, honestly. Hydration isn't only for people training for championships and marathons. It's about daily maintenance. It's for airport travel days, standing on the sidelines of your kid's soccer game, especially in the summer, back-to-back conference calls, or neighborhood walks. Proper functional hydration is essential, and Liquid IV is the #1 powered hydration brand in America. Their hydration multiplier is the one product you're missing in your daily routine. I gotta say, it's something I sometimes have before a workout, which you definitely can use. If you're traveling, they mention that as well. Or if you've, gone out drinking, it's kind of helpful for the next morning. I just got to say. But with one stick, you can hydrate real time 2 times faster than water alone, plus get essential vitamins and 3 times the electrolytes as leading sports drinks. There's a lot of junk in those sports drinks, but not in Liquid IV. It comes in 12 delicious, refreshing flavors to keep your hydration routine exciting. 1 stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone. It also contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C. Very important. With 3 times the electrolytes of leading sports drinks, it's made with quality ingredients, non-GMO, and free of gluten, dairy, and soy. Liquid IV believes that equitable access to clean and abundant water is the foundation of a healthier world, and they partner with leading organizations to fund and foster innovative solutions that help communities protect both their water and their futures. To date, Liquid IV has donated over 39 million servings in 50-plus countries around the world. Real people, real flavor, real hydrating. Grab your Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code MajorityRep at checkout. That's 20% off anything when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. I mean, some of my favorites, I've been getting into that pina colada, stealing a few packs from the office. Don't tell Sam. I like passion fruit. I like strawberry. My classic is acai. But all of the stuff is really good. 20% off anything when you shop Better Hydration today using the promo code MajorityRep. MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. All right, guys, quick break and we'll be back with Kerry Howley. We are back, and we are joined now by Kerry Howley, feature writer at New York Magazine and author of the new book, Bottoms Up and The Devil Laughs, A Journey Through the Deep State. Kerry, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me.
For sure. I was saying this to you in the break, but in terms of pieces that have aged amazingly well, I encourage everyone in this audience, go check out Kerry's piece on Tulsi Gabbard in New York Magazine from 2019. deep dive into her life, and it's a great way to understand why she's so damn weird and whatever's going on right now. So appreciate that, Kerry. And congratulations on this book, as well as writing the screenplay for the movie Winner, about Reality Winner, who is, like, I would say very much the emotional center of your book here. Why for you was reality so central to the story that you wanted to tell about, the deep state in America and how it determines the truths and untruths fed to us?
Thank you for asking that. I think this book is born of an anxiety that many of us feel right now, which is that we've lost control of our identities, and that there are pieces of us on email and in the cloud and in Facebook messages and texts, and that those pieces of us can kind of be ripped apart and consolidated into a person we don't recognize. It's more than taking something out of context. It's building a different narrative. And a very extreme case of this is the case of Reality Winner, who is a young whistleblower who was portrayed using just those methods through texts, chats with her sister, jail calls, in a completely ridiculous way as a deep state terrorist. And this was the prosecution's story. It was a story that the judge was very sympathetic to, and took this pretty, essentially harmless 25-year-old and portrayed her as such a danger to society that she wasn't even let out on bail during her trial under the Espionage Act. And so, obviously that's an extreme case, but there's a sense that we have lost agency that I think is common among all of us.
I mean, how did they build that narrative about her? I guess it would be useful for you to remind people a bit about her story, how she got into the position that she was in versus the insane, narrative built by the government to lock her up under the Espionage Act, which is obviously in the news right now for Trump.
So newly relevant because a very different defendant has been charged under the Espionage Act.
Right.
So yeah, Reality was a 25-year-old who was working as a contractor at the NSA. And, she was going through kind of a quarter-life crisis. There was a lot happening for her. And she came upon a document that she didn't really need to be reading, which wasn't related to her work. A single document that suggested to her that Russia had been involved in attempts to overturn the 2016 election. It was just this account of the simple phishing attack on a voting system in Florida. And so she thought to herself, why doesn't everyone know this? I mean, this was a time when this was a very live question. If you turn on the radio, you turn on cable news, people were arguing, oh, well, there's no evidence. Well, she felt that she had evidence and she wanted to see how it would play out. So she printed it out. She stuck it in her pantyhose. She walked out of the NSA. And she sent it to The Intercept, which mishandled the document, and she ended up in jail for 4 years.
Right. And can you talk a bit about The Intercept's handling of this? Because I think, maybe there's some hesitancy to go after The Intercept on the left because of how much great work they do and how many great reporters they have there. We have them on the show regularly, but you don't pull punches about the way that The Intercept handled this information. And to be honest, obviously, it was a massive, massive mistake, and she bore the brunt of it by going to jail.
Yeah, I share with you your admiration for so much of what The Intercept has done. They've really filled a hole in what, there ought to be an adversarial journalistic process. And that just didn't exist with regard to the national security state until The Intercept appeared. In this case, it was just a complete absence, it seems, of protocol. So they received, in a mailbox, a PO box, this document that seemed to have come from nowhere. And that wasn't how reporters at The Intercept say that they were used to dealing with documents. There was this whole very complicated protocol for dealing with the Snowden documents at The Intercept. And it was actually so complex and onerous that people complained about it. They said, is this theater? Because this is so annoying. We have to go into this little room to report on these documents. There's cameras everywhere. We have to log everything. This is so annoying that like lots of good potential work isn't getting done. But for some reason, this document that Reality had sent never entered that stream of action. It was just handed to a reporter who, again, for some unknown reason, did not go over, like literally across the room to where sat some of the best digital security experts in media. I mean, they were just never consulted. And the document was mishandled in many different ways. I think someone who knew more about digital security wouldn't have just posted it online, right, where the document contained various identifying marks. Certainly someone involved who knew about digital security would not have sent, a text containing an image of the document to whoever does public relations at, or whoever that was a spokesperson for the NSA. And kind of all of these missteps added up. I think The Intercept would say, oh, she would have ended up in jail anyway. But there's no question that this process is not one anyone would defend at this point.
Right. I mean, so essentially there was like a digital footprint that was not revealed, or not removed, I should say, that revealed that Reality, like they were able to trace her to the leak of the information.
Yeah. And, there's really no way at this point for a government employee to print out a classified document and not have it traced, because everything is being logged, right? So I think what somebody would have, what people are doing more often now is just taking a document and instead of posting it, maybe summarizing it, right? Like there are ways to, there are more sophisticated ways to deal with leaked information than just slapping something online.
Right. Yeah. And that, so, how then, after this, information was given to The Intercept and it was published, and then clearly the government was able, then I guess this was 2017, now Trump's in office. This had to do with Russian interference in the election. Obviously, he's, called that a hoax hundreds and hundreds of times. And it is incredibly ironic, by the way, that he's currently being prosecuted under the Espionage Act, the same act his government used against Reality winner Daniel Hale, other whistleblowers in this way. But how then did they build this case against her? What was the government's portrayal of Reality winner versus the no pun intended, the reality of who she is?
So Reality is a millennial. She's really funny. She's really sarcastic. A lot of her communication was with her sister, with whom she had this particular banter. And so, they were having a conversation, I think, about climate change. And Reality texts her sister, well, I only say I hate America 3 times a day, LOL. And
that's good.
In the courtroom, right, you a prosecutor saying, oh, she says she hates America 3 times a day. And suddenly this completely tossed off comment becomes, this profoundly ominous desire to destroy us all, right?
Yeah.
And that kept happening. Little things like, well, why does she have so many laptops? How many old laptops do you have in your house, right? Like, that she had used BitTorrent, like that she had been on different websites, that she had been trained. She's an NSA linguist, so she'd been trained in Dari and Pashto, languages used in certain areas of Pakistan. She knew Farsi. And so she was interested in using those languages, not just to eavesdrop on people, which is what she'd been trained for, but to communicate. And so she was interested in those regions. And her interest in those regions was then taken as ominous, a sign of something unusual. She had become, after 9/11, she'd become very interested in language because her father had told her that if we could communicate better, then maybe 9/11 could have been prevented. And so she started learning Arabic at like the age of 9. And the prosecutor portrayed this as very strange. also, she wasn't allowed to talk about her work because it was classified. And so her parents gave this very moving, convincing testimony about all her volunteer work. She's like a deeply good, civic-minded, involved person. And then the prosecutor would say, well, you can't really know her, can you? Because she can't tell you about her work. So essentially, like, the nature of the person the government had made Reality Winner was used against her.
It really is like much like the prosecution of all of these whistleblowers, right? Like Chelsea Manning is one of the gravest like injustices on this front in the 21st century. You don't just highlight Reality Winner, although of course she's so central to the story. You talk about other whistleblowers, even some less talked about, like John Kiriakou. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
And I would also mention Daniel Hale, who is a drone whistleblower who also leaked to The Intercept, who is a deeply good person who felt guilty, as did Reality, about his participation in the drone war, and is in jail right now.
Yeah. Do you mind expanding on his story a bit?
Sure. He was someone who hadn't had many opportunities growing up, who looked to the military as kind of a way to get out of his town. Very bright kid. Also, as with Reality, a linguist. And he had some very deeply unpleasant experiences as a tech in the drone war. And he carried that guilt with him. It was a profound burden for him. And he essentially, the only way he felt he could expunge that guilt was to reveal a lot of information about civilian deaths that he had found while working at the National Geospatial Agency. And so he many more documents than Reality he revealed to The Intercept, which then published them. And he's currently in prison.
And I guess we'll just shift. Yes, obviously solidarity with Daniel Hale, another incredible, grave injustice. And you tell all these stories here, and it's really under this umbrella narrative of how truth in the 21st century is as flexible as possible, and yet there's so much information out there to aid the maximum amount of flexibility. Like, the 21st century has been defined by the mass hoarding of everybody's information in this way, and yet you talk about how that helps narratives like the ones you discuss, because the government has all this information at their disposal. It's so easy to manufacture truth in that way.
Precisely. That is so well put. And I would also say it's so asymmetrical because everything is classified. And this is something you see getting out that isn't really being discussed in terms of the Trump indictment. Like, to say that something is classified is essentially to say nothing about it. There's someone in my book, Kiriakou, as you mentioned, who says, if you're at the CIA and you invite your wife to lunch, like, that's classified, because everything by default is classified. And so there's all the national security state creates this like intense aura of mystique over essentially like incomprehensible amounts of information. And there's essentially no declassification going on relative to how much is being classified every day. And that puts people in a weird kind of precarity, because, this is what fascist governments do. They, I'm not saying that our government is fascist, but
we've got some fashy parts. We can say that.
But this sense of putting everyone in a position where it's impossible not to break the law. It's very difficult not to break the law, and then selectively prosecuting different people. And people are even though it essentially means nothing to say that something's classified, people are still very taken in by the mystique of a classified document. And what's so ironic is that's what Trump got in trouble for, right? Like he was taken in by the mysterious aura of classification and wanted to show people, what he was allowed to, to have or wasn't allowed to have in boxes. So, it's just a mess. And in a strange way, it's a relatable mess, because we've all got, or at least I do, have like tons of disorganized data in places I don't really even understand where it is. But I think people don't realize how analogous that situation is to our own governments.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Oh, we had Matthew Connolly on, right? The Declassification Engine, a book that just came out. Thank you, Bradley, for finding that so quickly. Yeah, that was just about how over the past, I don't know how many decades, we've just decided everything's classified, basically. And it's in the name of national security. And yet it has allowed for, like, not the deep state in the way QAnon talks about it, but really, this entire apparatus that is able to act with impunity just based on, like, what we've decided was important as an American empire, which is to give these agencies untold power, and that includes over the mass hoarding of information.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that's why, the Espionage Act is a law that really isn't worthy of a free society. The Espionage Act reality was not given a chance during her prosecution to say, hey, I did this out of a sense of obligation. I thought people ought to know this. I was trying to inform the public about something I thought they deserved to know. She was prosecuted just as if she had done it, for fun, like Trump, or as an act of espionage, essentially, right? Like, there's no ability to argue for noble intent. It's just, did you have this thing that the government says is classified? And when you try to prove that it wasn't important, which, like, her document really wasn't particular, like, no one has died or even been put in harm's way as a result of that document being released, the government will say, oh, well, you're not going to be able to build any sort of case because any documents you would like are not available to you, and to show them to you would put people in danger, right? So there's, like, this blanket argument that all of this documentation somehow is a grave national security threat. And I'm incredibly skeptical at this point anytime the security state makes that argument.
That is such a great point, because that was the number one argument against Chelsea Manning, was the fact that she revealed United States war crimes, how we were, like soldiers torturing, shooting civilians and laughing from Apache helicopters, that was in some way threatening our troops. And then, to Edward Snowden, for Reality Winner, she was revealing what had already been talked about, that the Russian government was, like, trying to tilt the scales slightly for Donald Trump. It was just confirmation, and it had nothing to do with any intelligence operatives. Like, the idea that you can make that argument with a straight face is laughable, and yet they do.
They do. And it was the extent to which her defense was hampered by insane logistical details having to do with classification. Like, the government has all of this infrastructure to hold secret conversations, classified, protected conversations. But, if you just go out and hire a lawyer, they don't. So they had to figure out having classified phone lines. Every time all of her lawyers met, they had to meet in a skiff. Anytime they went on a document, they were told either they couldn't have it for national security reasons, or that, it would be too dangerous to show them, essentially. Right. And so it was basically impossible. It was impossible for her defense team to put that document in context, because they just weren't given access to any other documents. They weren't even allowed to read the document that they couldn't, like, Google on their computers the document that she'd already leaked that you and I could. That would have been illegal for them to do.
It's just unbelievable. As we kind of wrap up here, I wanted to ask you about the title of your book, just to kind of bring it all together, Bottoms Up and the Devil Laughs. I didn't remember where that came from, but it comes from, well, I guess you can tell the story and why you felt it was like a great title to kind of tie everything together with your book.
This is a book that tries to take seriously much of what we dismiss as paranoia. As you said, there is a deep state. It's just not the deep state that Q is revealing to us, right? And so the title is taken from a 2012 viral video in which a woman is famously and honestly very ably arguing that Monster energy drink is a tool of the devil. And she has all of these different arguments. Look at the numbers on the bottle. Look at this upside down cross. And I think, and that's, on the surface absurd, but when you look more deeply into the corporation that is Monster Energy Drink, when you see their history of basically discrimination against women in their employ, also the way that they have gone so profoundly against, they've used copyright law to go against any hobbyist, like the smallest mom and pop business that tries to use the word monster or beast will get a letter from Monster Energy Drink. I'll probably get a letter for saying that. There is a kind of interesting truth, I think, to her argument emerges. And it's also just a wonderful, it's a wonderfully well argued clip that I encourage everybody to watch after we're done talking.
Well, I mean, that's amazing that you say that, because it like, come on, I mean, it's insane. But what you're pointing out is like that it's this, like the hoarding of information in that way, and like the corporate then like structure to define itself at all costs. It creates paranoia.
And what is the devil but a shapeshifter, right? The devil's not going to appear, with horns and, a picket, whatever. Like this is how the devil appears. If we're going to take the devil as a concept. So, yeah. And I do think there is an analogy to the way we're kind of dismissive of people, but these stories, that people have about the deep state, they come from somewhere. They come from the knowledge that so much is happening in these incredibly resourced agencies that we have no access to, and that whistleblowers, as you'll call Q as a whistleblower, are some of the only people who are willing to show us what's really afoot.
Right, exactly. Well, Kerry Howley, I really love your work, and I'm happy that we were able to have a conversation. The book is called Bottoms Up and the Devil Laughs, A Journey Through the Deep State. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
You too. All right, guys, taking a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Edwin Ackerman. We are back, and we are joined now by Edwin F. Ackerman, professor at Syracuse University, whose piece in New Left Review is entitled The AMLO Project. Edwin, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, Edwin, let's start at base level here for large American audience. Might not be, some people might be watching from Mexico, but who is AMLO? Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador, I guess is how you say the full name. And how did he rise to power in 2018? He's about to be term limited out in 2024. So but a president who has been definitely left of center. And I think a lot of people view him as a leftist success story.
Right. He has obviously a very long political history. He's been a sort of staple of Mexican politics, I would say, since at the very least the year 2000, depending on how you're counting. That's when he became mayor of Mexico City. And he's ran for the presidency 3 times, winning the third time, and has always, in one way or another, sort of flown the flag of anti-neoliberalism, or critiques at the very least of the neoliberal turn. I think that would be the sort of more consistent element throughout the years that has identified him. The victory in 2018 was a rupturous moment. It came after two very difficult runs, one in particular in 2006, in which he claimed, at least from his perspective, that there had been fraud. And by the time that he won in 2018, there had been a significant crisis of representation with all the mainstream parties of the period. So he won by really big margins. So from the beginning of his presidency in 2018, he's had a significant amount of let's say, political capital or legitimacy that he's maintained or worked with throughout his tenure.
And he's maintained a very high popularity rating within Mexico. And when he did win in 2018, he had like a massive lead over his closest contender. And he's basically essentially maintained a popularity throughout his entire presidency.
Yeah, he has. I mean, if you so yes, in the actual victory of 2018, he won by 30 points in a four-way race. So that's a gigantic margin. And he's maintained the popularity at around the mid-60s, depending on how you're counting, if you average it out. Now, there's some interesting sort of elements to that trajectory, because it hasn't been exactly at that level throughout the years. There was, for example, a significant dip at the very beginning of the pandemic. So in the summer of 2020, for example, that was his lowest point. So part of the story is, yes, on the one hand, retaining that level of support, but also coming back from that dip during the summer of 2020 when the pandemic started.
His party, Morena, he founded it, if I'm not mistaken, right? What's the party's history? What are the planks of the party, and what's its future post AMLO?
Right. So it's a very recent party, founded in 2014 as a party. It existed as a type of social movement organization before that. AMLO himself, as I was saying, has this long political history. He began in his first experience with party politics was as a member of the PRI, which for people who might not be familiar with, is a party that stayed in power in Mexico throughout most of the 20th century. Was a party that was the heir of a revolution at the beginning of the 20th century. Over the course of the years becomes authoritarian and eventually also presides over the neoliberal turn. But during most of the 20th century, it essentially presided over a mixed economy, a Keynesian economy. And it's in that period in the 70s in which AMLO, as a 20-something-year-old, joins that party. That party was then going to have a significant split to the left. Its left flank broke off in the late 80s, precisely as the party leadership was making a full conversion into neoliberalism. The break in the 80s produced a party called the PRD that is still around, even though it's a sort of tiny little party. That's where AMLO really comes to the center stage at the national level. He becomes mayor of Mexico City under that party. He breaks from that party in 2012, 2013, as the party tries to move to the center under a label that party leaders at that period called responsible left, quote unquote, which meant basically signaling that they were not radicals, that they were willing to compromise with the neoliberal center, etc. He breaks with them in 2012, forms this organization that would later become a party. So it's a very new organization. In fact, many of its sort of institutional elements in terms of rules, internal rules of operation, how to choose a successor. That's one of the big issues that's going on as we speak. Party leadership, all of that is really sort of in flux. It's an organization that had a few years of existence before it suddenly found itself at the helm of of state power. And again, if we're going to think about it ideologically, if you look at its program, essentially it's basically a nationalist, developmentalist, anti-neoliberal or post-neoliberal, depending on how precise you want to be with these terms, organization. Now, at the same time, I should say that there is, partly because it's such a new organization that also entered into state power so quickly, there is a significant amount of difference or lack of cohesion of what the organization is. It's particularly at sub-regional and local levels. So there's a big batch of people who win local positions in 2018, partly sort of under the wings of the huge victory of AMLO. And there at the local or sub-regional level, again, it becomes ideologically much more fragmented, right? So
Gotcha.
That's important to say as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just, I guess, talk about some of the successes of AMLO's time in office. And he came into office, as you say, trying to beat back neoliberalism and bring in like a new era. There were pro-worker reforms that had a lot of effect, is my understanding. What were some of those? What were some of the bolstering of social programs that he presided over?
Right. I think there's been a huge sort of advance of pro-worker reforms. I mean, we can get into some of them. The list is a long list. Off the top of my head, I can mention the institution of formal rights for domestic workers, for the first time in the country's history. The elimination of a hiring practice called outsourcing, that allowed employers to evade all sorts of otherwise legally mandated bonuses that they would have to give to their employees. This could be easily skirted by outsourcing, quote unquote, the hires. There's been historic increase to the minimum wage, increase of mandated vacation days. The work week is in the process of being lowered. It's currently at 48. It's going to be lowered to 40. Those are just some of the reforms that come to mind. A very important one is labor reform that dramatically facilitates the possibility of forming new unions, something that was really difficult to do before this.
And how has the working class or even the middle class responded to this?
Right.
I mean, has that support manifested itself in polling and in like other races for his party?
Right. Yeah, that's a really important point, I think, because there is an interesting thing that happened to the sort of social base of his party or of support that's different from the social base that put him in power in 2018. In 2018, the working class vote was sort of scattered around the different parties. In other words, there was really no working class vote per se as a bloc. They were just sort of, to the extent that they were part of the political process, were absorbed by other sorts of parties, including the neoliberal bloc. And interestingly, even AMLO's 2018 victory was partly with the support of the credentialed middle classes, or university trained sectors. Right? Over the course of his presidency, there's been this transition in the change in the base, in the composition of the base, where it's become a much more working class popular base, and the credentialed middle class faction sectors have some, at least, not all, but some at least have abandoned their support for him. So you have this transformation of the underlying social base of the party, and I think the growth of support from the working classes, the informal sector, which is a very important sector in the country. In fact, might be the majority of the country, depending on how you're counting it. So the working class in the classic sense, the informal sector, and the peasantry, the countryside, those are the real bastions of support in the present. And the business sector, not surprisingly, and perhaps surprisingly, credentialed middle classes are on the other end. Right? They represent the growing opposition.
Well, and in terms of the opposition, like, how has the business sector responded to some of these reforms?
Right. There is, of course, a big backlash from the business sector. And one of the interesting developments over the past years is the degree to which the business sector has come out on the public sphere to openly organize the opposition. So partly as an effect of the huge margin of victory in 2018, all the other parties that had dominated politics throughout the neoliberal period were suddenly, reduced to tiny parties. And they have had to form a coalition. Parties that historically were supposedly, against each other, are now running as a coalition. That's their only chance of winning. But that coalition requires, obviously, a huge amount of coordination, of money, of talking points, of agreements to concede positions or spoils between the different factions of the coalition. And it's quite interesting that it's been the business sector, again, that has to openly step into the public sphere, as opposed to move just simply behind closed doors to organize the opposition. So that's the current state, I guess, of the opposition. They are, I think, when they are put together, they do, particularly in some areas, are within reach of winning. Right? But in general, I think they are pretty weakened. They are really reactive to the president's agenda. They haven't been able really to set any agenda items produced within them. So the success of the backlash, I guess, is quite limited at this point.
Well, I mean, that's good. Good to hear. Yeah. I'm curious because there's been some characterization of AMLO in the press in the United States, like the New York Times, that he has authoritarian tendencies, and I know he's been like fairly militant and obsequious to Trump and Biden in terms of border policy. Right. What's your assessment of those criticisms?
Right. I mean, I think I don't agree with with those particular criticisms. There are other things actually that I personally would criticize and would be happy to talk about them if you want. But in particular, those elements, particularly the question of authoritarianism, I think is a real mistake. And I would say that. But, speaking to U.S.-based audience, that we should read these accounts of AMLO in the liberal press, like the New York Times, with the same level of consciousness or suspicion that we did when they were covering the Bernie Sanders campaign, for example, which is they do have a particular agenda, even if it's unstated. It's a liberal agenda, not conservative, but it also means they do have a gripe against left-wing populism. Yeah. And so that is, the sort of general framing or bias of most of the coverage. Not only outside, I would throw in Mexican media, mainstream media at least, there as well. So basically, I mean, to put it in short, when I read the New York Times coverage of AMLO, I am basically reading transcripts of opposition talking points. Like it's basically a one-to-one. And this, could get into this, why this happens, but I think it has to do with the particular networks that, intellectual networks that, overlap between New York Times and Mexican media, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a through line, frankly, for Latin American coverage in institutions as well, like the Washington Post and the New York Times. I mean,
Yeah.
like how they covered Venezuela is a great example, or Bolivia. You see those kinds of they're very susceptible to that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So just to, for example, use an example of an instance in which that was sort of framed as authoritarian. There is this ongoing back and forth between AMLO and the former head of the Electoral Institute, the institute in the country in charge of organizing elections. Right? So from a kind of simple perspective, the fact that the head of the executive, that AMLO, is criticizing the head of the National Electoral Board looks bad, looks authoritarian. Of course, it's missing all sorts of context and history about what specifically the Electoral Institute has done, how it has operated, and the specifics of the tenure of that particular head of the Electoral Institute, who, just to throw a couple of examples, a couple of years ago, already into the AMLO presidency, was using the Electoral Institute platform to give lectures against the perils of populism. This is the head of the Electoral Institute, the head of the head of the organization in charge of organizing elections, lecturing about the perils of a movement without naming in particular a party or a leader, but we all understand what he's referring to.
Yeah.
Now that is a clear breach of the neutrality that a judge, that a referee of elections should have. So, and that's just one example of growing tension between that person and AMLO that became increasingly public, and the opposition was successful at sort of rallying around the flag of defense of institutions against the populist authoritarian. And again, that's what I mean by oftentimes publications such as the New York Times really just picking up uncritically talking points of the opposition.
In terms of the more substantive criticisms that you hinted at earlier, what would you list?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, well, you did mention the question of the relationship to the U.S. government
along the border. Yeah.
The border, yes. I mean, I think there's no real way around the fact that there's been a sort of dismal record of defense of the rights of Central American migrants. Obviously, the situation, the case is very complex, has many sides or sort of levels of difficulty to it. I'm not, trying to be sort of simplistic about it, but at the end of the day, the AMLO administration has basically acquiesced with the request by the U.S. government, which again is not just Trump, it includes Biden, and it presided to Trump as well, to secure the southern border, to prevent Central American migrants from going through the country and reaching the northern border. And the ways of preventing this have not exclusively, but significantly included the use of force. Right? Not exclusively. There's also been an offering of Mexican visas and other sort of attempts to deal with the request or demand of the U.S. to kind of to placate the border. So I think there is a sort of forfeiting of sovereignty on that front that that has happened. I think the other element that I would bring up here is his relationship to feminism. AMLO's relationship to feminism, which has been a sort of complex one as well. On the one hand, he sort of is proud to boast that he has a cabinet conformed of 50% men and women. This is a explicit self imposed policy of his government, right? To have gender parity in big appointments of that sort. But at the same time, there has been this very important and very militant movement of women and feminists, street mobilizations, particularly around the question of femicides, right? Which is an issue, obviously, that precedes AMLO, but continues into his presidency. And he's really wavered about how to position himself in relation to that movement. I think his initial reaction was more interested in unmasking it as a plot by the right wing, partly because sectors of the right wing have tried to sort of hijack or jump on that front, right, as a way of just kind of attacking the government, but missing the fact that in its core and in its bulk, the movement is a real movement, not a front for the right wing. So has been sort of ambivalent about how to work with the demands of the movement, and has been, for example, critical of what in the U.S. is called direct action tactics, so sort of sort of rioting elements of the tactics in ways that come off as condescending or even some degree tone deaf in relation to the severity of what the movement is pointing to, right? This persistence of femicides. So to focus on the methods of protest as opposed to the significance of the demand has been, I think, a problem.
I mean, well said. That's very helpful to understand. Last question for you, Edwin, before I let you go. How does AMLO and his legacy fit into the larger resurgence of left-wing movements that we're seeing, I mean, in the Americas, but really in Latin America right now?
Right. I think, as we start to think about the legacy of AMLO for the left, there's three things that I think immediately come to mind. Two that have to do with the particular phase of neoliberalism in which we're in, which is one in which there's been a significant fragmentation and weakening of the working classes as a political agent. And second, this process of hollowing out of the state capacity. So in that context, in the context of, let's say, the sort of decimation of neoliberalism on that front, I think the legacy is a revamping of class politics, right? At least an initial revamping of class politics, and revamping of the power of the state, right? Now, I would say a third element here, which I think is one of the sort of, let's say, unique elements of the government, at least in sort of the comparative historical perspective with other Latin American left governments or with populist movements of the West more broadly, which is the particular conception of corruption as neoliberalism, or the link between neoliberalism and corruption. What's, I think, unique here is that whenever in previous instances in the country or in Latin America more broadly, in previous instances in which corruption has been taken up as a source of organizing or a political issue, it usually tends to be a right-wing demand that basically calls for a contraction of the state. It is implied that it's an anti-statist sort of demand. What's unique here is the use of an anti-corruption message or platform in the service of advancing the interest of the left, and in fact of regenerating the legitimacy of the state. So those would be the three elements that I would think about in terms of a legacy for the left.
Well, really appreciate your time today. Edwin F. Ackerman, professor at Syracuse University. The piece in New Left Review is entitled The AMLO Project. Edwin, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Emma.
For sure. Okay. All right, guys. Well, with that, we are going to wrap up the first hour of this program, the free hour of this program. But first, I just want to remind you, Against the Web, audiobook out right now, narrated by our very own Sam Seder, Against the Web by Michael Brooks. What's the subheader there for the book? Yeah, we'll find it. But you guys...
It's Against the Web, a cosmopolitan answer to the new right.
Yes. I remember when I first got my Kindle, which I've kind of abandoned, but that was one of the first books I got, Michael's Against the Web. So I read it on there. I want a physical copy, though, too. But though, for you guys, I mean, you get to hear Sam without ums and ahs narrating Michael's book. So go and get Against the Web, the audiobook. You can go on Audible or wherever you listen to audiobooks and hear it.
It's going to be very surreal to hear a sound like that.
I know. It kind of sounds probably like an AI version of him, but it is the real Sam. So awesome stuff that Sam was able to do that. And on ESPN, we did a deep, deep dive into Live Golf, the Saudi money that is taking over the sport of golf, the merger-ish between the fund that funds Live Golf and the PGA Tour, as well as we talked about the now concluded Stanley Cup finals and NBA finals, and also the state of the running back market in the NFL. How running backs need to take back their powers as workers and consider a running back strike, honestly, to get a little bit more compensated for their contributions to the game.
For absolutely destroying their bodies over the course of 5 years and, some millions of dollars, but you better stretch that for the rest of your life and all the health ailments that are going to come
Exactly.
with this.
And I mean, for not to get on the soapbox, but they are laborers as well. And for people that don't watch football, they get beat up in the first years of their very low contract, and by the time they're eligible for their second contract, teams are cheaping out and not paying them. And that is a huge problem in the sport right now. YouTube.com/ESPN show. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Oh, yeah. Left Reckoning. That's a good question. I think David and I are going to do a patron show this weekend. So we had a big problem with our streaming software, so we're trying something new. So I think that's what we're going to be ending up with, patreon.com/leftreckoning. Also, on the postgame on Tuesday night, I went deep into graphics cards and greedflation and how the investor class ruins everything. With just speculative mania when there's perfectly good graphics cards that need to be made so people can game at high frame rates for cheap prices. So patreon.com/leftreckoning to get access to that.
All right, awesome. And whoa, seamless.
We're here.
What's up, guys? How are you? And we cannot hear you, Matt Binder. You got to fix your mic.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. But this, now that we've shadow banned Matt Binder, gives Brandon Sutton an opportunity to say what's happening over on the discourse.
Absolutely. We'll have a new episode out for fans of the show this weekend. We'll be talking about Trump's indictment, his newest indictment, I should say. The rights war on KFC, obviously, and many other topics.
All right.
Wait, did you skip over the rights war on Chick-fil-A?
No, they're also boycotting KFC Diablo cups.
Because of the Diablo.
Yeah, even though Diablo is about fighting evil, not being evil.
Oh, because of the Diablo video game.
Yes.
Right.
Not like a new hot sauce called Diablo.
Well, that's demonic. So.
There are people the people that we are having this trans arguments with, they literally think there's a non-zero chance that if they take Diablo hot sauce, they might actually be possessed by a demon.
Wow.
That's who we're dealing with. Matt Walsh, these people literally believe in demonic possession, and we just have to act like we're members of a rational civil society with them.
Rest in peace,
Benny
Pat
Johnson
Robertson.
was I believe in demons.
No, we get it. No, yeah. It's we get it, guys. You believe in spirits and demons, and right. Anyway, so Binder, are you here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hello, buddy. Oh, what's happening?
I was just.
I don't know why I called you buddy, like you were my son or something.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
I call my son buddy. It's fine.
Yeah, well, I don't have children, so I don't know where that came from. But
I'll be your buddy, Emma. I'll be your buddy.
Good to know what's happening on the doomed and scam economy.
Sure. So on Scam Economy this week, I had on Molly White of Web3 is Going Great. And we dove into the SEC lawsuits against Coinbase and Binance for selling unregistered securities. And in the case of Binance, actually, the lawsuit includes allegations of fraud. So definitely check that out at scameconomy.com and youtube.com/MattBinder. Is this the end of crypto in the US? We will see. And then on Doomed this week, I had on Madeline Peltz from Media Matters to talk about her trip to the Turning Point USA Young Women's Leadership Summit in Texas. And, how it was full of people like Charlie Kirk and Benny Johnson and Candace Owens telling young women in their late teens and early 20s to say goodbye to any career path they would like to lead, and they should just stay home and have kids. Just like they all did, of course. So check that out at doomthecast.com and at youtube.com/MattBinder.
That seems like a pipeline to getting involved in MLMs, taking that advice.
Of course. Yeah.
Binder, did you see the Dooley McKinsey predictions? Last year it was Web3 is going to be worth $5 trillion in the next year, and their most recent one is AI was going to be worth $4.5 trillion in the next 5 years. And it's really funny to me because I think there's more to AI than Web3 bullshit.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show how fake all that shit is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. They basically they probably, and this is just a joke, I don't want anyone coming after me, but they probably just copy and pasted the Web3 presser and just replaced AI over the Web3 mentions. It's literally just the same hype. It's the same hype. And like you said, it is unfortunate because there are some, AI isn't Web3. There is some use case and utility there. I think the biggest detriment is calling it AI because it's not AI in terms of
it's
what
advanced
we've been
computer chips, which surprise, those have an effect on the world that we should have obvious.
Yeah, right.
Right.
All right, guys. Well, we'll talk about these kinds of things and more. I'm very excited to play Carrie Lake's latest single in the fun half. YouTube.com. Wait, no. No, you're already watching. I was about to say ESPN again. Jesus. Check us out in the fun half. The number is 646-257-3920. We will see you there. Call in. Have fun with us. We'll read your IMs, play some clips, take your calls. Bye-bye.
Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Rand Paul. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabs.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No. Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me...
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Back.
We are back. I am back in the nick of time. We are in the phone lines, and I'm turning off the voicemail. So you can call in 646-257-3920. Cole from Michigan says, can we get some explanation on how this new tech isn't AI?
Which new tech specifically? I mean, a lot of it, yeah. Like
the
term
I think
AI.
it's...
Yeah, go ahead,
I think it's because what I said. Yeah, I mean, what I mean when I said that was, when we think of artificial intelligence, we think of like what we see, or at least what most people do. We think of like what we see in like, sci-fi movies where like, it's robots that can think and come up with solutions on its own.
Somehow
That's not
consciousness emerged from the technology.
Yes, and they decide to do something against its master, the users or whatever. But that's not what this is. These are just language models trained on all this data to basically put together human-like sounding sentences and paragraphs, and in some cases, entire blog post length, output. The like whether it's factual or whether the information is legit, that doesn't really come into play. Like, yeah, there are some companies out there who are now adding that as a feature, but like and again, this is like they're still basically just using search engines to like fact check this stuff. It's not like the AI is actually thinking.
No, you think AI is so advanced that you're still not using Bing, even though it's using ChatGPT now.
Right. Like this is basically what we're calling AI is just basically, I mean, it's called at this level when you talk about the actual data, like language models that are
machine
meant to
learning
sound,
too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but even that one can be misleading, I think. Like, what's actually learning? Is a machine actually learning anything? Not really. Like, it's
well, you could learn by just
themselves.
Yeah.
You could learn by just memorizing something, which is basically what this is. It's not like they're learning and like are critically thinking based on what they've quote unquote learned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I mean that's what it is. I mean they basically fed incredible amounts of data from all over the web and all sorts of book resources and studies and papers and lots of social media content to basically like train computers to sound human-like and be able to put together sentences and paragraphs that they hope you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It's not a technology that can explain something to you like an original thought. Everything has to be based on human output that it was trained on. Like that's the thing too. Like people keep talking about how like, oh, AI is going to replace writers and everything. Well, then if that's the case, then this is peak for AI because there'll be no new data to train it on because it's not going to come up with anything new. It's just going to continue to regurgitate everything up to this point. And then when it does eventually see data trained by other AI, I bet you'll get some really interesting and sort of like messed up use cases where AI is trained on AI and like, it's going to sound really weird. It's
just
going to
degrades in quality.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
The further you're removed from like actual human experience, then it just becomes like it's
there's nothing new to add to the and again, like that's why this is so frustrating to me because it's so anti-human. It's what a capitalist would want. Like, what if I could make a Amazon Prime show without having any writers? And that's just like that will never be capable because like the best that AI does right now is it's basically like when your phone autocorrects, you start off a sentence and say, Matt drinks, and then you just hit whatever autocorrect suggests for the next time, and it creates a sentence that sounds vaguely like you. This is just a hyper more advanced version of that stupid trick that what people were like amusing themselves with in 2014.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's exactly what it is. I mean, podcasts have been advertising Grammarly to like correct your writing for like years, since like 2015 or whenever they came out, probably even before that. And that's basically the same thing, except technology's advanced a little bit further, where it doesn't just correct your grammar. It can also, based on, all this data it's taken in, can also guess how to put out a sentence that sounds correct too.
What's funny, Bender, you posted, and I don't know if you can bring this up, but the whole Mars catalog, Elon boosters on Twitter were, getting in their bag about how impressed they are with AI, and posted this, AI can even browse Twitter for us now. And Bradley, if you could put that full thing up. Elon Musk had an interesting response, which is interesting given that OpenAI has no authorized X Twitter feed. But this actually gets to a fundamental problem with AI, because like, what's that nerd who was like, oh yeah, we need America regulators. We want to work with you. We're so afraid of this thing that we're capitalizing.
Sam Altman, the OpenAI guy.
Sam Altman, please help regulate us. We just want to be partners in this. And then the EU is like, hey, you're actually stealing a lot of stuff you don't have rights to go and basically throw into your model. You need to stop that. And he's like, well, we're leaving then. You're not allowing us to do our AI technology. You're going to be behind. You're probably going to be invaded by China soon. Like that sort of thing I find very interesting, because like, I'm not a pro copyright person, but I am a pro don't let capitalists steal people's shit and commodify it person.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the funny thing about that thread though is like Elon sort of classifies him as himself as like an AI expert. Like he's warning people about the dangers of AI while he's also starting his own AI company.
Right.
But basically what happened there in that specific tweet thread is him not understanding what ChatGPT was doing. Basically, that Tesla fan account asked for like a summary or ask ChatGPT to pull up like someone's recent tweets. And, ChatGPT's only trained on data up to, I believe, 2021. So technically you'd think, oh, it can't do that. But then OpenAI came out with a plugin for ChatGPT, which now allows the chatbot to conduct web searches. So basically all it did was someone asked for recent tweets, and ChatGPT used that web search plugin to just literally scrape Twitter, like to search it like you or I could do, and just, regurgitate exactly what those tweets said. Musk thinking that, it seems to think that OpenAI was like accessing Twitter through its API, which is how it collected all that data to train on all that 2021 and prior to that data. Mm-hmm. So he's like, he's sort of made an error there that makes him look not so bright on this topic.
Gotcha. All right, let's we'll read some IMs and then we'll do some clips here. Ken Ray for May says, hey, MR, if I could get some condescension from Matt, I'm listening to the Death is Just Around the Corner podcast on JFK. I'm just wondering if he are wondering how thorough you could vouch for the info he's presenting. I'm sure the CIA is deeply entrenched in our government and around the world, but the way he claims everyone is CIA starts to come off similar to how my anti-Semitic uncle claims everyone's a Jew or Freemason. Just curious about your opinion.
I mean, you'd have to be specific about who he's suggesting is CIA that wasn't CIA. George de Mohrenschildt, who was his like point of contact best friend in Dallas, was a international sort of spy and like did a whole bunch of stuff for oil companies and maybe covert foreign policy.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of and Oswald himself like was at least an asset of sort of crypto counter Cuban groups, and so like you have to be more specific. I think as far as Death is Around the Corner, it's one of my favorites treatments of the topic. He's more deep into it than I am, and I'm more ambivalent about how definite I want to say like certain conclusions are. Like I like to have like a more of a probabilistic approach about what I think happened, and I think there's a range. But I think it's a very entertaining podcast, and I think he has a really good assessment or a good encyclopedic knowledge of some of the figures involved.
And I'm not even as close to as knowledgeable as Matt is on this, but we were talking about this yesterday. I feel like some of the most damning stuff is like who was in charge of the place where Oswald worked.
Who got him the job? Yeah, exactly.
Who got him the job where he supposedly, where right.
Yeah,
so,
and for your skepticism, I think Chill Goblin did a video a few months ago that is sort of more skeptical than I am. I think Chill Goblin kind of pulls a punch at the end a little bit, maybe, but nonetheless goes into a lot of those sorts of you want to call them coincidences or connections. So I would recommend that.
It was phenomenal. We should have Chill Goblin on the show.
Yeah, great animation in that video.
Amazing creator who deserves more love. And thank you to whoever the IMer was who recommended it to me. I watched the whole hour 40 minutes. It flew by. It was so good. So Emma's brown eye says, wait, what does that mean? Oh, fuck. God damn it.
So let's,
don't do that.
Ban people like that.
I'm not reading your IM. Give me a break,
GTFO.
dude. I'm sorry. I thought it was literally a reference to the fact that I have brown eyes. Okay, great.
Wait, I don't get it.
I don't want to talk.
We'll discuss it later.
Yeah. It's not even funny. Aftermarket Trump NFTs says your Reddit sub is very different from the show. A recent post said the GOP stole 2004 and 2016 elections and tried to steal 2008, 2012, and 2020 elections. The top 15 replies were in enthusiastic agreement. We can't be taken seriously if we can't accept losses separate from underhanded, dirty, but legal or not prosecutable political tactics. I don't know who's on our, we can't control that. I mean, people want to moderate the Reddit sub, go for it. Maybe that can weed out some of that stuff.
Sorry, what was the thing about Reddit?
I literally lost the IM.
Solidarity with all the people who are standing up and locking the Reddit threads. It seems like an interesting bit of collective action. And it should probably go longer than 2 days. And what my understanding, I don't know if you guys are more up to date on that, but I get a sense that Reddit is starting to forcibly reopen certain subreddits, which is horrible.
I've heard that, but I haven't been able to confirm that. But a lot of them are still either restricted, which just is a read-only mode, or private completely, which means you can't even access the subreddit. I wrote a piece. I wrote a piece about how basically this is a move now from these big companies to shut off something that was sort of like an unwritten rule in social media for a long time, where users gave these companies their data in exchange for the platform, and those companies were then able to monetize their data via advertisers, but they were also allowing access to developers so they could make cool things for those users with that data that companies who are profit driven wouldn't necessarily think of or even take the time to create. And now they realize that in some of those cases, these indie developers have created products so beloved that they're used more than the company's own clients for the platform. In this case, that Apollo for Reddit app that this developer made, that is a beloved way to access Reddit, and so they want to charge for it. And they charge a lot. Elon Musk sort of kicked it off with his Twitter API charges of $42,000 per month to access the API, and Reddit's following that lead. And it's all just if they could just sign up a few people, they'll be happy to kill off all those apps that people love that they're not making a dime from. If it means just a few companies are paying them tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars a month.
You might need to restart your mic again, Bender. Just a heads up. It wasn't too bad, but we're verging.
But I like what Bender said there, because I think we have a contention, particularly among those on the right, including Elon Musk, one of the world's richest men, that the threat to free speech is from the government being like, hey, you are spreading anti-vax stuff. And I think there's something to be said about guarding against the Pentagon and DHS involving themselves in that situation. But to the extent that we see a rolling up and a suppression of what we've understood as an open internet where ideas can be spread freely, it's going to be because capitalists are trying to rent seek and pull more profit from these. Go ahead, Brandon.
No, I think you're right, but I also think that Elon Musk's war against free speech, a lot of right wingers, they sometimes throw in government as the person who's holding them down, or like denying them their free speech. But a lot of stuff is just rooted in like the quote unquote Twitter mob coming for them. And that's just, that's one of the reasons why there is no solidarity between like, far right free speech activists and leftists who are actually being targeted by the government, because they don't mean the government. They just mean like societal norms, usually. Like that's what's silencing them. The fact that people don't really like hearing what they have to say. So like, Elon Musk and his war for free speech is, a facade to get you to forget like all of the other bad things he's doing. Like killing monkeys. But I guess he's moving on to like great apes. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, that's evolution for you. Speaking of monkeys, but like, oh shoot, I had another point, but I totally forgot to say. Oh yeah, I mean his free speech thing again. He's literally helping Erdogan and Narendra Modi suppress free speech, like actively doing so. But.
Modi's like one of his like ministers, like someone in his high up in his administration was out there earlier this week. I shared it on Twitter using so Jack Dorsey did an interview and actually did a pretty good explanation of how India, Modi's government tried to ban Twitter in the country. And I got my problems with Dorsey, but if he's going to come out and put someone like that on blast, and we should get that insider information that he probably was more privy to than anyone else. Yeah. And Modi's government, one of his like heads in the government, was out there using the Twitter files to deflect because he brought up how the Twitter files showed that Jack Dorsey couldn't be trusted. So you had Elon Musk's Twitter files being used by the censorious Modi government to deflect and deny Jack Dorsey's allegations about how India was trying to censor Twitter. Just amazing.
Unreal.
Yeah, but it's the left's fault that the Twitter files didn't become a moment for mass accountability of the deep state censorship regime.
Lame Duck Charles says, okay, go on.
I mean, I was going to say, like, yeah, probably because you had them published on the website itself, a website that people don't really go to.
And the source was literally the billionaire CEO, and owner. Lame Duck Charles says, friendly reminder to vote in the Nashville primary today. I just wanted to get that out. Nashville primary today, guys. All right, let's do some clips. We got maybe not clips, but songs. How about that?
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. Do you want to get it out the way first?
I'll boot up the quality degradation filter.
Yeah, Matt, could you just come over to the soundboard and just do the shit music filter
you
over
weren't
here?
supposed to say that out loud.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was muted.
Excuse me, everyone can hear us. We're on microphones. Yes,
that clearly sound great. So obviously music would sound great too.
It would.
It's totally not a different thing that sounds different based on different audio inputs and wavelengths and bands. And I'm not an audio
codecs. How do they work?
Yes.
There you go. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
For people that do not know what we're referring to, Tim Pool has accused this program of putting his song through a sounding bad filter.
Who has time for that?
Yeah, or who has like any technology that we could.
Well, apparently Tim does, because I heard the song. That must be what's wrong with it.
Yeah, he did it first. I don't know.
The funny thing is, none of our critique had anything to do with like the audio recording production quality. It all had to do with the actual like
composition,
right?
He was mad that you said he sounded like Nickelback, which I said he didn't. I said he sounded like Rise Against in Theory of a Dead Man had like a baby together, but like
put it on Ambien.
He thinks he's like an emo band, which I don't know. Just because you're sad doesn't mean you're an emo band, man.
I agree.
Major label Rise Against. I need to state major label Rise Against, not old school Rise Against.
Okay.
Wow.
Important.
Thank you for the distinction. With all of that prelude, let's see if Carrie Lake can beat out Tim Pool as a musical artist. Now, to be fair, she is really just doing spoken word. The Truth Bombers are the band that's behind this single. But here we go. It's called 81 Million Votes My Ass.
That's great. Ew.
I know.
What is that?
Sounds like a wet slapping, not like camera.
Upside down.
If you told me 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that I would be in the middle of a political movement, I would have said, put down
in the middle
Hunter's
of it?
crack pipe.
Who is she?
Right now.
Sorry.
Put down Hunter's crack pipe, she said.
I keep calling like Kerry Lake like the Ennis Cantor of politics, because it's like, you didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
And you're here talking like all this, but you're in the center of a movement, Kerry.
I mean, Ennis was a starter, at least for
Exactly,
a
it's
few
unfair.
teams. Kerry Lake has not won elected office.
Yeah, she yeah, exactly. It is unfair to Ennis, who got double doubles in the playoffs. Like, she's never won an election. What was she, like, a talk show?
She was
host?
a radio host, and now she's
She was
just
a
like
news anchor or something. Yeah, she was like a local news anchor.
And now she's literally the thirstiest person on the planet for Donald Trump's approval. She was outside of the courthouse for his arraignment. Her and Vivek Ramaswamy were the two losers to show up and try to grift off of those supporters.
And what's also funny about her loss is that other Republicans running for statewide office lost, but with a closer margin. So what, did they just not get cheated as much as Kerry Lake did, or is there maybe something deficient about her as a politician?
No, she was that much of a threat. They had to make sure that she was done. All right, start.
Only so many mules. Only so many mules to allocate.
Oh, don't you worry, Brandon. They reference mules. They reference mules in this song.
Would expect nothing less.
Again,
sounds like Tom Sawyer by Rush.
Except with like splashy.
Yeah, maybe we do have a bad movie filter.
2 years ago, 3 years ago, that I would be in the middle of a political movement, I would have said, put down Hunter's crack pipe. Right now. Right now.
I can't afford the groceries. I can't afford your gas. It's bad inflation across the nation. 81 million votes my ass. Hey, 81 million votes my ass. You failed to build back better.
Lots of
Your
videos.
middle finger to middle class.
They've pissed off an already pissed off woman.
81 million votes my ass.
The crime was committed.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing.
21st day of publicly transitioning.
It's catchy.
We're living on planet crazy.
It's got a hook.
It's way better than Temple.
Top full of China, hookers and blows and crack, and the diary's got Creepy Joe in the shower. 81 million votes my ass.
None of this has anything to do with the voting.
The funny thing, I mean, I don't know how much we need to watch, but like, yeah, that guy with all those liabilities ran up 81 million votes, a record in this country in raw numbers, against your guy.
That's my favorite thing when Trump says, like, he's like, I got the most votes out of any president, any sitting president. Like, it's like he has to qualify sitting president because he can't say the most votes was the guy who beat him.
Well, he can say that. I mean, he basically does. But yes, that is his, like, right.
It's like me saying, like, hey, actually, the Timberwolves are the best team in the NBA because they had the biggest quarter against the Nuggets.
Yeah.
Karl Anthony Towns.
He's
in a game they lost.
But that's why, I mean, Trump is the ultimate, like, public relations guy. That really is his calling. He should have been a PR executive in another life. Can we go to, like, minute 2? I love when they break it down, right?
Oh, we got a little bridge.
Because we got the bridge, and that's when we get her most spoken word element. It might be a little further, but we can let it run. Again, this is better than Tim Pool, to be honest with you. Yeah,
the iTunes charts are going to go crazy for this.
Are you guys in
agreement?
It already 100%. It goes without saying this is better than Tim Pool's music.
Yeah. It's catchier.
And I'm not even a country music fan. Except for Nelly, of course.
Oh, yeah.
She was Carrie Lake was pumping up how it was #1 on iTunes.
Yeah, I didn't even
which
know that,
you should all know, by the way, that the reason conservatives always use the iTunes charts and nothing else is because in the year 2023, when nobody buys individual tracks anymore, it is incredibly easy to actually hit the top of the iTunes charts.
I would not be shocked if it was done like the way, right-wing books get bought in bulk to inflate themselves on like the New York Times bestseller list, which they then pretend to not care about. That's something like Forgatio Blow or whatever.
Yeah, Forgiato Blow.
Forgiato Blow. It's the same
They
kind
were
of
shadow
deal.
banned, but also number 2 on iTunes.
Because you can't. Go ahead.
I don't know what the exact number is, but you just need like a few thousand sales on a single track. Again, we're talking like 99 cents for the track.
Right.
A few thousand sales in a short period of time to pump it up on the charts, because the charts also consider, how long how long the track's been on the been for sale, and how the time period in which the sales are coming in. It's not just like, otherwise, Taylor Swift would be atop the charts all the time for like just overall sales.
Right.
So, all these factor in for like the perfect storm for conservatives to like game those numbers, even if it's just getting their followers to just all buy the track at the same time.
Brandon, go ahead. I know you wanted to say something.
Oh no, I was just going to say what Matt was going to say, but in a meaner way. Like, you only need like 20 people to get to the top of the iTunes like single chart. Right. It's not 2004 anymore. Come on.
You can see this in like the Steam online, the Steam video game things, like, because very often the charts, like coming soon charts, are flooded with these porn games, and they know how to like flood the system because they get everyone to buy their like $2 or pre-order their $2 game, and all of a sudden it's like this game you will never hear of except you see it on those charts because they have gamed the system.
Well, no pun intended. All right, let's hear them break it down.
A lot of times too, like those charts actually mean very little. It's just for those people to like stroke their ego and say, I hit the top of the charts. Yep. Like very rarely do the charts actually deliver like more sales, or at least a significant number of sales for anything that tops them.
Okay. Yeah, let's go.
Yes. Hey, 81 million votes, my ass.
And at first I chuckled. I said, oh my gosh, Hillary Clinton is actually talking about me? That's funny. And then I got to thinking, maybe that's not funny. Oh my gosh, help.
It would be funny if Hillary Clinton killed her.
I just want you all to know I'm in perfect health. We've recently had our automobile
Rich
service.
Up there.
Wow.
And the brakes are in good order, and I am not suicidal.
She's bragging about not being suicidal.
The air balloons.
God, we get it.
Oh, Daft Punk on the track.
It's like Eiffel 65.
Votes my ass. 81 Joe, don't make me laugh.
There we go, Bernie.
Hell yeah,
2,000 mules.
Yeah, here we go.
It is despicable what they did, and I will not let these bastards get away with it.
Wow, this proves everything.
Yeah, solid evidence there. That's some freak on
as hell. He had the swamp going after him, and he was still getting stuff done. And now we have stumbling, bumbling Joe. I miss the bull in the china shop. I miss the mean tweets. I miss Donald Trump. 81 million votes. My ass.
Does Carrie Lake know that she could just go to Truth Social and see all the mean tweets she wants? Trump's still putting them out there.
Yeah, that's his decision.
Well, apparently this song launched on Truth Social. Speaking of,
there was a push notification for it.
Oh, beautiful! Because you have Truth Social.
Yeah, and Matt, I'm sure Matt got it, or maybe.
Does Rumble have an app?
Yeah,
because I've been watching it in browser.
I'll be honest, I kind of forgot to check in with Truth Social for a while.
I actually made it so I did this when he was on Twitter too, but I make it so, and this is the only person I do it for. I make it so I get the notification every time Trump posts.
I mean, if you're gonna put on post notifications for anybody, that's probably the person to do it.
This song kind of goes
It's
off.
always guaranteed to be funny.
Always.
This song kind of snaps, even if it's through our designated soundboard knob that goes, when we flick it up, it just goes shit music filter.
Yeah.
I mean,
it broke through our shit music filter.
It's better than Tim Pool's crap, but
Skill
I mean,
issue.
I will say it is a little bit clap stomp rock and roll.
Oh yeah.
Maybe a little bit hackneyed at this point, but
it's for barn dances and line, line socials, whatever they have.
Yeah.
Whatever they have in
the drum beat
Utah.
that very clearly tells you how to do the line dance.
There's a little bit of Big and Rich, but they also want to. They also try to do a little bit of like kind of a Rush era, like electronica.
Yeah.
I like that they experimented with it. Tim Pool's with all like one note.
Yeah.
I will say though, for the narrative of the song though, Carrie Lake's involvement makes no sense. Like, I feel like it should be interspersed with Donald Trump's sound bites, being that he's the one who would be going after Biden for quote unquote barely or not really beating him. Like, what's Carrie Lake's feud with Biden? Like, does Biden even know who Carrie Lake is?
That's what's so
definitely
funny.
not.
Yeah, she's like, that's what's so funny about that song. It's like, I'm here at the center of movement. No one knows who you are.
Yeah, no, but she replayed B-roll of like Trump being in her vicinity or like giving her a slight hug on the way to the podium at 40 different angles multiple times in the video.
And the other one being like, oh, Hillary Clinton noticed me and said some bad things about me. Like, congratulations. There's
like, no way Clinton knows who she is either.
Yeah,
Right.
it's going to be so great too when Donald Trump like completely ignores her and picks Kristi Noem or somebody to be his VP because she's
why would he
thirsty
pick her though? She's a loser. Why would he
she's
pick
a loser. She's literally never done anything.
Because she's like groveling at his feet via music video and by showing up at his court appearances. And, you know, I don't know.
It would make more sense for him to pick Marjorie Taylor Greene. At least she's won before.
Yeah, but you got to be successful for him to like you groveling at him.
Yeah,
Otherwise, he finds it kind of distasteful. Like they really for people who love him so much, they must not have watched like The Apprentice as much as I did, because like he has very easy tells. Like, you know, he doesn't like you talking too much about yourself. Prefers you talking about him.
Yep.
You know, certainly like in order for you to be like around his vicinity and him to like you, you have to be successful. You can't have just lost your election.
Yeah.
But when he called that like guy who lost and was being funded by Peter Thiel, and he was the
Blake Masters?
Yes, Blake Masters. That was his name.
Yeah, you gotta defend me harder. You can't.
Yeah. Let's do the Steven Crowder thing here. And then I'm sorry guys, I don't know, like it's already nearly 2:00. We'll probably get to 1 or 2 calls. I apologize. But all right, here we go. We have the Crowder thing. Okay. So Steven Crowder here is he's still doing his show. I guess he's on Rumble for sure, working through the public embarrassment of his wife putting out that video and showing how he's a shitty husband, to put it mildly.
It's interesting how much that has gotten into the mainstream. I was listening to Blocked Party, not really a political show, but they talked about Crowder, and the guest didn't exactly know who Crowder was, and then they sort of reminded her, and she's like, oh yeah, I saw him abusing his wife online.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, good for his ex-wife or wife to get that out there, because that is what it looks like when Steven Crowder far-right conceptions of gender and marriage actually kind of manifest
in practice.
That's what it looks like, if not worse. But he's back. He's still, chugging along. This is him talking about how the right wing has failed on social issues. And I think this is instructive just like because a few years ago we were told gay marriage, it's settled law. Gay rights, we're good. We're good. We can move past this, and now we have corporate pride and all that kind of stuff. But we're in the midst of a major, major backlash. And I don't care about Target or Bud Light losing money, but I do care about what it indicates. And it indicates that the right is successfully framing people to a certain segment of the population as like pedophiles and groomers.
I think, and I'm not a market watcher, but I also think if you look at the like Bud Light company stock price over the 5-year span, like it's hard to say what exactly is causing the downturn.
I know,
think there's
but
probably a degree, of course, because
Yes.
it went under Modelo and stuff like that. But I think like they're a little bit taking credit for larger trends in the economy.
Maybe, but either way, if they felt spooked enough to put out that stupid statement.
Yeah.
So
right, they're having an effect. You're right.
Yes. But anyway, here's Crowder talking about where the right's gone wrong in their fight against equality for everybody.
I think you have a lot of conservatives who are basically just liberals who cave on slightly less. I don't think our side was consistent as it related to civil unions versus same-sex marriage. I don't. Right. I think civil unions is what would have been appropriate.
Yep.
And I said that a long time ago because we have pastors who've been jailed in Canada and the UK because marriage has largely been recognized as, a religious institution, and now they are precluded from violating human rights. I don't think we have been consistent. That's why you never hear me say, look, if you're an adult and you want to do it, you do whatever you want. I'll go. No, I say I won't go along with it. You can legally change your name. Fine, I'll address you by your new name, but I am not going to act as though you are a biological female.
Yep.
I think that what has happened is the left is proactively progress for progress' sake has to turn into evil because there are no moral guardrails. There's no guiding right and wrong. It's just, well, we have to change things and dismantle systems that be for the sake of it. It's far easier to destroy than it is to build. The left really doesn't have to build anything as far as cultural institutions or as far as functioning government. They don't really have to. Spend more, print more, but let's just allow more as it relates to morality. But they're incredibly stringent as it relates to school choice or automobile choice.
What?
Or plane choice. Take your pick. But I don't think the right has been remarkably consistent. That's why I think you need to let your freak flag fly and not apologize at this point. It's the frog. Do you know how you know you're the frog in boiling water?
This is for children. In
California, they're going to make it very feasible for your kids to be taken away if you don't support gender-affirming care. Do you know how you know you're a frog in boiling water? That sex changes and puberty blockers for 6-year-olds was just described to you by me as gender-affirming care. And I haven't been punched in the face.
What is
That's
he
how far it's
talking
gone.
about?
And a big part of it is because of people on the right who don't want to. That's why we have our issues with big tech.
All right.
Can you pause?
This is marketing.
It's also a lie. I just want to point this out. The left is not it's this classic projection about the kidnapping thing, about how in California you can take their kids away. Ron DeSantis just signed a bill in Florida that allows the state to take trans kids away from their families. That's something that the right, if they're planning on receiving gender-affirming care, that's what the right is doing. The right is incredibly proactive with this kind of stuff. The right is incredibly aggressive. Over 500 bills introduced just in the year 2023, targeting trans people, whether it be in sports, like the 2 kids participating in sports in Utah that they signed a bill for, overriding the veto of the Republican governor, whether it be gender-affirming care bans and immense difficulties of or imposing difficulties and guardrails for even adults to access gender-affirming care throughout the country. The right is the proactive one. So he's just lying. And when he talks about civil unions, he thought that would have been okay. If marriage is just a religious institution, Stephen, then make it just a religious institution and everyone has a civil union. The reason that gay people should be also included in marriage is because there are tax benefits, there are social benefits, and because they want to be considered equals in society. So if it's just a religious institution, then everyone's a part of a civil union, but they don't want that. They want a tier.
No, and all this stuff about social transition in where they say teachers are grooming kids. What they mean is teachers are seeing a child, and this is very rare, but a child say actually my gender, I have some sort of gender confusion, and that the right wants that teacher to immediately report that kid to the parents. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't think California is going to be forcibly removing gay children from anti-gay parents, but that is a big problem in this country. And you see it with trans parents or parents that have been frankly misled into bigotry or educated toward a bigotry that makes them unable to accept their child's identity, whether it be gay, lesbian, or trans. And that is an absolute tragedy. That these people, this sort of bigotry is causing rifts that is ruining lives.
I just think it's a little on the nose as well. Complaining about marriage, complaining about people's kids getting taken away in the aftermath of all of what's going on in his own personal life. It just feels like a lot of Republicans do, which is they just project their predator nature onto other marginalized population. And they just go there might be a video out there of me yelling at my pregnant wife and insinuating I might put my hands on her. And a bunch of my employees might be saying that I'm putting my testicles all over them. Right. But who are the real problem, who are actually the sexual deviants? Gay people and the people who love their kids and who know where they are right now. So people unlike me, another newly concerned uncle, mad that people have, loving families. And I think it's good that this is going on. Not good that it's going on, but it's illustrative that he's going through all of this publicly and still preaching this amount of hate. Because a lot of people, I think, they are concerned about Steven Crowder's sexuality. Is he bi? Is he gay? Candace Owens like opened that can of worms. But irrespective of all of that, what we know is that he's a predator and that he's an abuser. And he comes on television, like many Republicans do, and talk about the theoretical abuse that might be going on in trans households or households with trans kids or at drag shows. And we don't have any of that on video, but we have him on video. We have, evidence of him being abusive, and they want to, wave that away and talk about the real problem.
Sourced. Multiple people, former employees, like I think like maybe a dozen to the New York Post, talking about how many times this predator, alleged predator, I want to just couch it, showed his testicles to them, placed his testicles on them, exposed himself to others. But it's the LGBTQ people that you need to worry about. And I also just want to add, name an instance, Steven Crowder and other right-wing bigots, where trans kids under the age of 18 are accessing gender-affirming care without parental consent. And I'm not talking about the debunked Barry Weiss outfit article. Name one. Name it. Because it doesn't happen. It's not happening. Parents are all involved in this. So they obscure that because they have to pretend that like some government is forcing your child into gender-affirming care when it is a long process of social transition, of doctors being involved, and parents accepting their children for who they are. Maybe Stephen didn't get that kind of acceptance growing up, but it doesn't mean that it should be deprived of other people.
I think you all hit the nail on the head. I just want to add, it was very, the one thing that took me out of it was that Steven Crowder seems to be losing it, honestly. He did not deliver that was a horrible segment. Like, listen, I'm not talking about the content or what he's saying, but the dude usually can string together sentences and make sense as to what he's trying to say. He's, and get across his ideological belief, even though the content of that we disagree with very much. But that was just like, I don't even think he was stringing together words at some point that made sense. It was very bizarre.
If Sam was monologuing like that, as soon as we finish the show, I'd be like, hey, buddy, you should take a vacation maybe.
Yeah, because it's not very coherent. But let's keep going with this clown.
Wait, there's more?
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't been punched in the face.
Oh, well. Yes, you have by that union organizer.
Yeah. And a big part of it is because of people on the right who don't want to. That's why we have our issues with big tech.
That's why you
if you don't say this, now we're going to say it.
Stop it, pause. We have our issues with big tech, but if you look in the bottom left of the corner here, Rumble.com, a.k.a. Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation, number 6, is going to be there for you and the technological saviors of free speech, starring David Sachs and Peter Thiel.
That's how far it's gone. And a big part of it is because of people on the right who don't want to. That's why we have our issues with big tech. Well, if you don't say this, now we're going to say it. Well, if you don't touch this third rail, we're going to touch it. You can't cower in fear and then be surprised by the fact that they keep bullying you. It's the first lesson you're supposed to learn from your dad. You can't just bullies will keep picking on you if you're an easy target. And I don't mean be hateful. If someone says transgender children, no. Gender affirming, do you mean sex changes and puberty blockers? Well, yeah, okay, I'm against that. Just call it out wherever it is. So I think the left is, in a concerted way, it's progress for progress's sake. We knew this was going to happen. There were some conservatives, like yours truly, people who called it out for a very long time. We were told that we were extremists, and now you all find yourselves in the same boat. So if you think that gender affirming, meaning sex changes for children, is extreme, consider yourself an extremist.
Yeah,
if you think that a 52%,
just a note on sex changes, so-called for children, not happening, not a thing that happens. It's something that, like Jordan Peterson, when he gets on here about butchers going after 5-year-old kids, he's being a hysterical freak. That doesn't happen. To the extent that any sort of gender-affirming care happens, it is, like Emma said, over a long period of time. You can take Dwayne Wade's kid for an example. Like, early on, came to parents who were not, I don't think Dwayne Wade was sitting here thinking like, I'm going to make this, I haven't made my other kids trans, but I'm going to make this kid trans. This kid decided, hey, I have a gender, I want to explore a different gender, so they socially transitioned, which is has nothing to do with surgery, has nothing to do with puberty blockers. And this is that is a step way beyond what Steven Crowder or any of these freaks can actually admit that they're okay with. Because what happens then is, oh, it actually is not the end of the world and is actually making this kid a lot happier. So then later, after a sustained amount of time within the medical system, working with professionals, you do discuss something like intervention like puberty blockers. And what that does is stop this kid who has transitioned into a gender that fits them more, more to their comfort. It stops them from going into a body that they don't want and that makes them hate themselves. And this is all understandable. This is all like basic. The extent that it's confused, it's because it's trying to turn out Republican voters.
Yeah. And 90, there was a study in pediatrics about watching social transitioning for kids over a 5-year period. 94% of the kids continue to identify as the gender that they began to social transition in at the beginning of that period. The rest of that 6%, over half of the rest of that 6% started to identify as non-binary. And then the other less than 3% remaining, they were really, really young, heavily weighted towards children under the age of 6, and they did not undergo dramatic bodily changes via like surgery, of course, or via hormones or puberty blockers at that point in their life. So this is just a non-issue. There have been countless studies about this. It is not ambiguous at all.
It's like the abortions the day before the pregnancy is supposed to come to term.
Exactly.
It is a hysterical smear by witch hunting freaks to smear an entire class of people that they want to suppress.
I mean, at least at the end, he was honest for a little bit. These people should understand that they are extremists. More specifically, they're religious extremists. They, he likes to gesture, and a lot of right wingers like to gesture towards like a theoretical science that underpins these ideas because they know just, modern era, it's not popular to come out and go, I'm a religious extremist and I want to control women's bodies. But all of the science that supports, this or the anti-trans inclusion in the sports of their gender is just gestures to science when they really just think that it doesn't fit right. Because we are raised in a secularized Christian society, or rather a society that is full of secularized Christian dogma. And so it's really hard to peel away that like onion of pseudoscience that gets people, gives people the layer of intellectual sophistication when they're addressing this topic, but at least, more realistically, they can be described as extremists. They're not people who are engaging with the science. They might have a few charts, but then usually the scientists who made those charts will come out and go, I don't want my research to be associated with this. I didn't mean it that way. You're misinterpreting it. Then they'll pretend like that didn't happen, find another new chart, or just, adopt a new argument strategy. But ultimately at the core of it, they're religious fundamentalists. Maybe they're not in touch with Christ or, whatever other religion, they subscribe to, but they should understand their ideas are, indistinguishable from evangelical Americans. That's what's pushing this.
Yep. All right, guys.
Again, people that believe in literal demons.
Yeah. But don't know they believe in demons sometimes, or don't think that believing in demons, it makes them religious.
Right. Yeah.
They don't think that makes them like Christians, that they believe in heaven and hell.
Yeah, it's so funny too when evangelicals are like, they're Satanists on the left. Like, no, if you don't believe in Christianity, you also don't believe in Satan. That's a big part of it.
But I think some religious people can't believe that people don't believe in God.
It's unbelievable.
And to me, it's like, I can't believe that you actually do believe in God.
Yeah. All right, calling from an 818 area code. Think I know who this is. 818, who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, guys. This is Dave from Jamaica. How you guys doing?
No, that was a long pause, but we know who you are. What's up, Dave?
No. Yeah, long pause for switching off speaker. So I'm calling.
Are you down in the mines,
again.
Dave? It sounds like you're down in the mines today.
Yeah. So I was going to start with a somewhat serious and then quickly transition to something more fun. When Crowder says you should punch somebody in the face for recommending puberty blockers to a 6-year-old, I'm thinking, if I remember the original use of puberty blockers, it's for any kid who's going through puberty too early, and I think 6 would be too early.
Exactly.
It just proves these guys don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
I mean, even in the Florida bill targeting trans kids, there is a carve-out for that usage of puberty blockers.
Right. It's very insane stuff on their part. But I was going to ask you guys, since you were talking about blatantly right-wing music, which ones are your favorite? Because like mine was I'm trying to remember. I just know the hook. It was Kid Rock and some other loser. Ain't nobody gonna tell me how to live.
That one's
good.
To be honest, that was the catchiest one I'd heard in a really long time.
I like the country song that DeSantis has, "Sweet Florida." That's a great one.
No, that sucks, Bradley.
that's a good track.
You like it ironically.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of a few others. Kneel My Ass, I Ain't Gonna Kneel.
Okay, right.
I don't mind all of Forgiato Blow's songs, especially the ones that have my name in them. I find them all to be quite charming. I think that, Forgiato Blow's not a great rapper, but I think he's better than you know. It's like that guy who paints those like really elaborate oil paintings of Trump looking sad or confused. You're like, I mean, this subject matter sucks, but you're better than this. Like, you could do something else. You could be a juggalo instead. Like, that's what I think when I see Forgiato Blow. I'm like, you could just be on stage with Cottonmouth Kings, my man. Like, what's going on, dude? Is this really?
This is a great point, Brandon.
The clown makeup a problem? Because you don't have to wear it.
The problem, Brandon, is that he did try this career, and it only took off when he started doing pro-Trump stuff. So I feel like you've already the question's answered for you.
I have my favorite. Oh, go ahead. Can we do mine, Dave? This is
No, go ahead, Matt. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Thank you. Your apology accepted. This is an older video from I think 2008 or something like that. 13 years ago, but it's called Christian Side Hug.
Oh,
this
nice.
is my favorite.
Oh my gosh, I remember this.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Give me that Christian side hug, that Christian side hug. Give me that Christian side hug, that Christian side hug. I'm a rough rider, filled up with Christ's love. Give me that Christian side hug, that Christian side hug.
These are the easy rules, so pay attention, it's essential. This ain't no front hug zone, you ain't that fly, you ain't my gon' stop. And listen, no front hugs and no kissing. I ain't that scared to call your mama, you'll be riding home in a coma. I got my crew. You ain't got nothing. Follow these rules, cause we ain't bluffing now. You
pretty good.
What's so funny about that is
I love that.
I went to church a lot growing up. Went to a few sort of church getaways sort of thing, and the only thing useful about church camps, especially when they're co-ed, is mingling with the opposite sex. So the idea that they have an entire song being like, no front hugs, side hugs.
Yes. Why would the front hug be bad? Because
your genitals touch.
A girl's boobs might press against you.
Of course.
I mean, that's
your genitals line up too. That's the whole thing.
I just dropped my favorite conservative song in the chat. If you guys want to pull it up, it's a true classic. I think once you see what it is, everyone will remember. Yeah, in Ping. It's I don't want to give it away until you pull it up, but it's truly one of a kind.
All right. Dave, you're really getting your fill here for the answer to your question.
Oh yeah. I'm satisfied.
Okay, good to know.
There's a music video and everything for this one.
Can you tell us what it's called?
It's gonna give it away. It's gonna give it away. It's gonna give away the. Yeah.
All right, we got it. We're getting to it. Oh yes, this one's good. You're right. This is a classic.
Right, ready in 3, 2, and go. What is this?
You'll enjoy this one, especially, man, I think.
Sam likes this one, too.
Freedom in Afghanistan, say goodbye Taliban, free elections in Iraq, Saddam Hussein locked up, Afghanistan underground, finding out America.
Sorry about that.
Run once the fighting has begun. Libya turns over news, Lebanese want freedom to Syria.
What is this, a pro-Obama song?
No.
Bush was right.
Bush was right.
I hate that riff so much.
Yeah. All right. So we got that.
That was
All
like
right.
that was like an emo "We didn't start the fire" retread, like in support of the deep state, basically.
I thought I got Weezer vibes.
Yeah, that right. It was like Weezer, like Click 5, or
Weezer would never.
My favorite. We didn't. My favorite is the break, and he goes down the
Simple
whole
Plan.
Bush administration and goes, "Cheney was right. The Condi was right."
These fucking neocons! I can't believe it.
I can't believe it. All right, Dave, does that answer your question?
Oh, no, that more than answers it. I am, as I said, very satisfied.
All right.
Yeah, Dave, you may have gotten more than you bargained for.
Right. But I think I'm going to end with this, and this does not represent your views on MR.
Okay.
But I do notice that when Steven Crowder got punched by that union guy, he didn't really much bother union guys in person so much anymore. So, food for thought.
Food for thought.
Food for thought.
Thank you, Dave.
I mean, yeah, he turned on his wife. That's the danger.
Oh, yeah, well, then, I mean, yeah, that's the dark side of it. All right, should we, what should we do here? Should we do this kill me thing, or what are you thinking, Bradley? In the meantime, I'll read some IMs while you think, like, what's our next good clip we should do. Chris Burdick. Okay, I'm just got to the part of the show with the Crowder clip. You guys have to make a sound drop out of "We're Gonna Touch It." Tater Tot. Oh, F yeah. Christian Side Hug is a banger. Base 365. My number starts with a 407 area code. Please take my call. If not, I will understand. I will try again. All right, before I forget, I will take your call. I will take your call right now. Calling from a 407 area code 407. I believe you just IM'd. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, my name's Gerard, calling from Central Florida. I believe we talked about a couple months ago regarding Val Demings and Maxwell
who?
Frost.
Val
Demings and Maxwell Frost. Yeah. So I just wanted to preface it saying that, I appreciate the Majority Report. I appreciate you guys because you guys help me have open and honest discourse with people regarding politics, and it's incredibly beneficial. And I think what you guys are doing is incredibly sort of, it's great for our world, especially given how it's a very hyper-partisan, state, in its hyper-partisan state right now. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Matt, all the people.
Thank you.
I wanted to preface this because I was incredibly hurt by the people on the Discord. You guys always advertise the Majority Report Discord, and I always use Discord. And I went on there. I had some questions. I see myself as a Christian man, and I sort of emphasized that when I went in there, and I felt as if they discriminated against me. I'm a Haitian American man. I'm from a low-income area. I've been through a lot. Throughout my early years, I suffered from a lot of hearing loss, profound hearing loss. It's hard for me. Like, I was incredibly introverted throughout my early years. I suffered a lot of physical illnesses at a very young age. And, I was able to uplift myself from that because, thankfully I went to church, I found God, and, it helped. It helped. And hopefully I don't come across as toxic. I know there's a sort of culture within the left, how they sort of view Christians as a sort of, a dogma, No, I'm a progressive. I'm a progressive in my nature. I don't hate people. I don't harbor any sort of ill will against other people. I started to read, have you ever read Kierkegaard?
Not in a
Any
while.
of you?
No.
So there's a particular piece that I discovered. It's called The Sickness Unto Death. And Kierkegaard explores the idea of despair and how despair is the true sickness leading unto death. When I was very young, experiencing my hearing loss, I wanted to kill myself. I was very suicidal in that nature because it felt like I was having an identity crisis because it's just like, God, why are you punishing me?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you sort of making me go through this? But Kierkegaard explores that idea that despair is not only the sickness, but it's the cure. If we're able to identify our despair and uplift ourselves from our depression, finding God in that nature, how I found God in myself, we're able to understand our fellow man a whole lot better. You know what I mean? Because a lot of us, the sort of evil, and I say depression is very bad in the sense that it makes us feel like we're alone.
Yes.
And
look, hey, so Gerard, let me just say, look, yeah. I'm so happy that you're doing better and that you found a sort of outlet for that, and I'm sorry if you feel that the
no, but
yeah, let's kind of we're close to the end of the show here, so
Okay, all right. Let me just get to the point. All right, so I went to the Discord. I was trying to, because is the Discord supposed to be an echo chamber, or is it supposed to be an exchange of
I'm not
thoughts?
sure. I'm not sure.
Well, it didn't echo
Gerard.
you, so it's not an echo chamber in that regard. But I mean, look, I just got to say this about the religion stuff. We always say don't go at people's religion as a major, it's just not helpful historically for liberation, in my opinion, to go at people's the metaphysical beliefs. That said,
However,
you are going to expect.
no.
I would say like this. Expect resistance, though, if that's what you are leading in. Because
I got banned. Because they saw that my viewpoint was toxic. But I was just trying to have a healthy conversation. I don't come at people to sort of just hurt them. I'm trying to understand this world. I'm trying to understand other people's viewpoints. I know there's this idea that
we can't adjudicate the Discord
yes.
stuff.
we don't.
I don't know.
But you advertise it though.
Well,
You
yeah,
advertise
but we
the
also
Discord.
don't we leave people to moderate it, and we
Well,
don't get a
I
lot
don't
of.
think-
Let me say
There
this:
was a particular.
if we
Yeah.
get a sustained period where religious people feel like they're discriminated against on the Discord, that'll mean more to me than one complaint. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to go back and adjudicate this sort of thing.
Yes.
These are contentious issues. You have very strong reasons that I think should be respected for feeling the way you do. But to the extent you're going to have a discussion about religion online, it's going to be a heated one. And I don't know how. Maybe you shouldn't have been.
Understood.
Maybe you shouldn't have been banned or whatever. But I don't know, man.
We can't.
I understand.
Gerard,
I understand.
we gotta wrap.
May I please finish? I understand, but can I make a final point?
Okay.
It's just, like I said, incredibly introverted, but the show has helped me to come out of my shell.
I'm so
like
glad.
I said, I appreciate this program.
Yes.
And I wanted to have healthy discourse among like-minded individuals. But once I sort of, how are we supposed to have healthy discourse if we're just going to censor each other? You know what I mean?
I'm
I got
sorry,
banned.
Gerard.
Yeah,
I got banned.
I
and I know it's not. Look.
No.
Please,
Gerard, I gotta
finish
go.
My point.
I appreciate you, and I'm glad you love the
on.
show. And I'm sorry, we just have nothing to do with the Discord. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I just look, Discord. Be more open to religious people. If they want to talk about how religion and Kierkegaard. But
Got it. Yeah. Well,
we also just don't have the resources to pay mods for the Discord. It's this is not a paid service. It's not something that's we are able. That's not the thrust of the circumstance of having the Discord is to adjudicate and arbitrate consumer claims on the Discord.
Yes,
I'm
and
sorry.
I'm really
We have
sorry,
a lot
guys.
more responsibilities in regards to the show than doing that.
We're turning off the voicemail. I apologize. As I mentioned, we're going to take all calls tomorrow. Calls all show tomorrow. So I'm sorry about the lack of calls today.
Which Matt is thrilled by the way. It was his suggestion.
Might be sick tomorrow.
Sam is very excited about it. All right, turning off the voicemail. Kirby42, or turning on the voicemail, I should say. Kirby4242 said, I'm praying to my God right now that you guys read one of my IMs, laughing my ass off. We religious lefties are thriving here. All right, so there you go. So let's do this final clip, then we'll read some IMs and get out of here. What do you guys think?
I think that sounds good.
Don't have a choice if I thought otherwise, right?
Well, I mean, this is a democracy.
Peer
It's
pressure.
a democracy. What'd you say, Brandon?
I don't want to do a
pressure.
clip.
Yeah, peer pressure.
I actually don't want to do a
It
clip.
depends
I'm
on the
done.
clip. What's the clip?
Well, gas stoves related. How we
Is it the Brian Kilmeade
Oh,
one?
gas stoves. I thought she
No,
was-
no. This is Glenn Grothman.
Okay.
So
let's do it.
here is Representative Glenn Grothman talking about Democrats.
I hate this guy, by the way.
Okay.
One of my least favorite congressmen.
I like his name. It's kind of like comic booky, like he's about to turn into like a giant lizard that Spider-Man has to fight.
Well, you think that because it sounds like Gotham, I think maybe, but I could see that too.
No, it's
like
the first and last name combination, Glenn Grothman.
Yeah,
right?
it's
That's his name.
I feel like alliteration is common among comic book villains too. But he's here on the House floor talking about Democrats wanting to seize your damn gas stoves. And I don't know. I'll just let him have the floor.
I'd like to thank Congresswoman Debbie Lesko for her fight and for our fight regarding gas stoves. What the Biden administration is trying to do with gas stoves is something that has become sadly more and more common from President Biden's party. It doesn't matter to the Hollywood elite. It doesn't matter to the limousine liberals. It doesn't matter to the Silicon Valley billionaires. It doesn't, quite frankly, matter to the welfare classes, but it matters to the middle class as to what their electric or monthly energy bill is. This is part of the Biden administration's effort to shut down gas stoves, which are much cheaper to operate than electric stoves, is a growing trend towards ignoring the middle class in America. These other groups, I don't think, would know what their electric bill is, what their electric bill is, and but
Not the
we
working
have to
class?
bring back the gas stoves on the grounds that it will save money for the middle class who does know exactly what their electric bill is. Thank you.
It's interesting, the condescension that he imbues his
The middle class, not the poor.
Not the poor.
Not the poor specifically.
I
The Hollywood
love
elites and the poors don't know what their electric bill or their energy bill is.
This class politics of like, oh, you have the Silicon Valley guys and the Hollywood and also those welfare folks. Like, it really gives the game away.
Yeah, exactly.
No, rich people and people who don't pay their own bills like good middle class Americans do.
Yeah, and then what the insinuation is that the poors are just, getting subsidies or not paying their bills or something like that.
They're on welfare. The welfare system famously pays your electric and or
They're
gas
already
bill.
used to using their little electric hot pots anyway because they don't have a kitchen. So there you go.
Well, I mean, but to be honest,
That's probably how he thinks.
Well, I'm sure the people that this affects the most, though, the gas stove thing is, well, first of all, this was a Republican bill that ended up, 29 Democrats and Republicans passed the Gas Stove Protection and Freedom Act. Oh, yeah. The other day, and 29 Democrats voted with them. But what the concerns are surrounding gas stoves. And Biden wasn't trying to ban gas stoves. There was an effort to look into what the effects are in particularly small spaces like apartments that have gas stoves, because there might be, like when we found out that lead in paint, pretty bad idea, contributing to health effects and a variety of them. Lead in water as well. This was an effort by the Biden administration to look into if the fumes emitted by gas stoves are affecting people health-wise. And Republicans, for some reason, have turned it into a culture war issue naturally. Because
you know what? We could
the
just
right for corporations to poison you via their stoves is what America's all about.
You know what
It's a nanny state.
You know what I would do about the middle classes having a tough time paying their electricity bills is I would tax rich people and give middle class money to pay their electricity bills.
Yes, we could subsidize the replacement of these gas stoves via the government, and then case closed. But
then you'll be taking away their freedom to have gas leaks in their house, and and you're not thinking, factoring that in, Matt. They want their freedom.
The Biden administration is taking away your freedom to die of carbon monoxide poisoning due to a gas leak, and your freedom to buy unregistered securities from your favorite YouTuber via a cute interface by a man who works out of the Bahamas. What freedom will they be taking from you next? And what freedom won't leftists take from you next is the real question.
That is the real question. But that's pretty consistent with the right's perception of freedom. It's not like the freedom to be who you want to be or marry who you want to marry or the freedom to not be crushed by healthcare costs. It's the freedom to make consumer choices. That's how it boils down to.
Could we just spend 30 seconds just to also hear what our friend Glenn has to say about low-income housing?
Oh, sure.
This is from a few weeks ago that we didn't end up playing this clip. But
Bradley's been harboring his...
We'd love to hear what Glenn Grothman has to say about low-income housing.
I would love to hear it as well.
But they left low-income housing untouched. I think as far as discouraging work and discouraging marriage, I think low-income housing is even a more dangerous program than the food stamps. So I'm including low-income housing in the mix of having work requirements. The amendment as drafted just includes Section 8 housing, which is an error on my part because there are other low-income housings as well. But that's what we have before us. I would appreciate it if you'd let that to the floor, because I don't think our team fought on the low-income housing front at all.
Go fuck yourself.
That was an
Did he say
that was an amendment for the debt ceiling negotiation to implement work requirements, not only other social programs like food stamps, but also low-income housing, because he thinks it's actually more impactful for people to like the erosion of the American family and the erosion of picking yourself up by your bootstraps by not having to show more wealth to obtain low-income housing.
Capitalism requires workers be under the threat of homelessness, and it doesn't. And that's disgusting. We don't have free speech in this country for me to express what I actually feel about that opinion.
I can't believe you forgot that Glenn, come on, man. There are other ways to exploit low-income housing. You only put Section 8? What are you doing, bro? He's got to fire his staffers.
I mean...
He looks tired in that video. He was up all night, like scratching his head to find new ways to hurt the poor. And he...
Yeah.
Which other programs could I slap work requirements on?
What ChatGPT's for?
That our low-income housing in this country is anything except threadbare. Like a few years ago, AOC, and I wish she would reintroduce this. I mean, it's a Republican House at this point, but we need to repeal the Fair Cloth Amendment. We have not built federally subsidized public housing since the 90s, because in 1998 we passed the Fair Cloth Amendment, which prevented that from happening because of like the same kind of sick mentality described there by Representative Glenn Grothman, superhero villain, but I mean, truly just like capitalist water boy.
The situation everyone is in right now, where rent is too high, is desirable to these freaks because it's the real estate class that owns every government in every local region.
Harlan Crow.
Right, like exactly. They make big bank out of selling more because there's not enough supply, so they can sell shitty housing for marked up prices. And on the back end, if people can't afford that, then it just means they need to go find a capitalist to serve harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And certain members of the Democratic Party also like that level of desperation too.
Oh, lots of them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with like Biden and this student loan stuff. We need, if that is allowed to go through, what we have decided is that the financial institutions, which are users who we've allowed to have control over the funds necessary for working people to get an education in this country, that the people who have student loan debt should be giving that money not to like local contractors for housing improvements or restaurants they should be giving that $400 to $1,200, whatever it is, back to the users who were put in charge of funds that get people educated.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Well, with that, we're gonna read some IMs and get out of here. Hanging up the phone. Sorry, everybody. Again, all calls tomorrow throughout the show. Salt Lake Lefty. Glenn, dude, here sucks.
Yeah, he's a real drag. Yeah, he's a real, not kind word.
Yep, exactly. Tortugita says, more muscular conservative voice from Emma. I could totally see this working for a Ken and Ken show reboot. I don't even know what you're referring to. Yeah. It might be just me, like my general man voice like that. That's what I go with, tough guy thing. Dan from Columbus, apologies if it was mentioned and I missed it. What did Emma and Bradley think of the A's fans' reverse protest chanting "Sell the team"? As this is a non-wrestling related sports question, Binder can stop paying attention for a bit if he wants. I mean, we covered the A's potential sale on ESPN.
But the reverse protest was awesome for the
Yes.
most part, in the sense that it was probably the most highest attendance game in Oakland of the season. The pitcher couldn't hear his pitch comm because the crowd was so loud chanting "Sell the team." The one thing that I didn't like is that they were throwing trash on the field, and they shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, that affects the players who have no impact on this.
And the staff was to clean that up.
Yeah, true. But at the same time, like, it's absolutely unconscionable that the A's are on the verge of potentially leaving Oakland. It should be like, and I saw Barbara Lee is actually introducing an amendment that forces teams that get public investment to remain in the cities like the A's. So I hope that gets some steam at least, and that's where she represents that area of the country. So that makes sense. Nut Gargler, god damn it, says, I'd like to, although I've said that phrase on the show I feel like a few times, so I have no leg to stand on. I'd like to complain about how your community is toxic by telling you how progressive I am and platforming my side of my experience to your fan-run Discord. Listen to me. Daredevil, Emma, Matt, Bradley, I was banned from Tinder. They thought I was toxic and I'm just trying to have some healthy intercourse. What are you going to do about this? Okay, all right, got it. We got it.
Let's give the guy a break.
I'm scrolling past all these. Demian, remember when Kid Rock had a song in a kid's movie about how he considers it mandatory to have sex with underage girls? That's cool. That was cool. Yeah. Also, don't look up if you enjoy Chris Collinsworth's commentary, what he had to say about underage girls when he was a wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. That reminds me of that.
The 80s, a lot of your heroes, you probably don't want to look too deeply into, way they were exploiting fan bases.
Some of your faves will be implicated.
Yes. To quote, what
Nancy Pelosi's daughter.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi's daughter.
Oh, ew.
Dianne Feinstein literally defended raising the Confederate flag in San Francisco when she was mayor. And still people were like, it's anti-feminist to want her to retire. It's like she's a titan of California politics. It's like, just Google her, guys.
Yeah. 502 Drew, you've mentioned several times that you don't care that Anheuser-Busch InBev is impacted by the Bud Light boycott. That's not who it's impacting. I work for a privately owned beer distributor that primarily sells ABI products. It has had a large negative impact on our sales, which directly affects the workers. Our drivers are paid commission on deliveries. A large part of our sales reps' pay is based on incentives for sales targets. Revenue is down, which will impact the opportunity for pay raises and yearly bonuses this year. Our employees have been harassed in the trade. This is who it's really impacting.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, totally get that. I just meant from a macro perspective, I'm not when corporate pride, when they retract, say, corporate pride initiatives, I'm not trying to overstate the importance of those because I think they're largely silly in and of themselves and efforts for the corporation to make money. But totally get your point about the workers at these businesses. My point is just I'm scared about what it means for gay and trans people largely.
Yeah, but also I don't think that's Dylan Mulvaney's fault.
Of course not.
Yeah, that's I think the most. I think that's what we're just trying to.
Yeah.
It's
right.
It's not her fault.
Chicago letter carrier guys. Crowder sounds exhausted. To Binder's point from earlier. Yes.
Up all night crying.
Well, I could only hope, honestly. Auto Dix. As to the death is just around the corner reference, I think Michael S. Judge would be a good show guest and not necessarily on JFK content either. He is a really interesting podcast on so many topics. More exposure would be beneficial to your audience. Thanks again to Matt for recommending his work a while ago.
That's a good show.
Miss Heathen, the problem with fighting for trans rights is how the left is always on the defense in the discourse when we really don't need to be. The left needs to get meaner and get the right-wingers and fascist grifters to defend the circumcisions or get them to be against it. I don't know what.
No, I think the thing is to put it in the context of the abortion stuff, which is that the right thinks that people should not be empowered to seek their own health care how they see fit, and that Republican politicians need to get in the way of it. That's the affirmative case. People should be empowered over their health, And it's in part of like a single payer Medicare for all type of system where people aren't price discriminated out of it either.
All right, 5 more. Woke Joker. Sorry about the juvenile joke that you didn't find funny. I guess you changed your handle, and I accept your apology. Love the show, but it's frustrating the system of government we have and society we've built forces us to try to fight the system from the inside. Nothing changes from the inside, and our voices have been mostly squashed by capitalism and corporate capture of our government. Dr. Chow's MD, Carrie Lake's mention of not being suicidal is a reference to Vince Foster, a deputy, a White House counsel for Bill Clinton who committed suicide in 1993, and his right-wing conspiracy that Clinton's... Okay, gotcha. I just didn't know what she was talking about.
It'd be hilarious if she apparently committed suicide.
No, it wouldn't.
No, it wouldn't. It'd be not funny.
It would not be funny. Matt's joking. The space case, that song went so hard that I had to put down George W. Bush's Coke spoon. Do you think if Hunter was just doing blow, would the right make a big deal about it? Yeah, I don't know.
What do you mean just doing? What else was he doing besides like partying too hard?
Well, no, crack as opposed to snorting it. Yeah, it's less...
Nah, they would freak out the same way, I think.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, it does have the added thing of like, they've racialized the use of crack, but I think pretty much fundamentalists feel the same way about crack as they do cocaine.
I also think it's because like Hunter, God help him, documented it so thoroughly. And then they stole his laptop from the repair shop, and that's where we got this. But like the fact that there's visual evidence of it, I think is what titillates the right, to be honest with you. Again, 3 more. Base 365. I'm not trying to impose my ideals or my religion on anybody. I just wanted to have discussions on all right, guys.
Sure. Look, the Discord has and the moderators have a certain amount of leeway, and we will take your complaint under advisement. But one single complaint isn't enough for me to sit here and say that Discord is unfair to religious people when that is, I get contrary indication of that. So I'm sorry you had a bad experience.
Interesting, Maya writes in, there's no work requirements for the landlords that bought up a lot of HPD-owned buildings in NYC and now are profiting off of them. Well said. Housing, public development.
Capitalist enclosure there.
Yep. And the final IM of the day. Iowan Ryan, victims of the Davenport apartment collapse can't find places to live. The city is asking landlords to let them move without identification or money for the first few months. Not sure how many need a place. That's horrible. All right. Appreciate you all. Brandon, Binder, Matt, and Bradley, thank you guys so much. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot lights shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive,